Time is now 6:01 p.m. on Tuesday, February 11th, 2025, calling to order the meeting of the Warwick School Committee. At this time, I ask everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. We have a few recognitions this evening, beginning first with our employee spotlights for the month of January. Ms. Ruggieri.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the school committee. Please join us in honoring our winners this month for the January 2025 Employee Spotlight. We have so many dedicated and talented employees working with us that this is one of our favorite parts of the month. So first off, we congratulate for the clerical category, Kaylin Polly in the purchasing department. For custodial maintenance, Joel Torres. Social worker at Scott, Allison Romano. Principal at Cedar Hill, Michelle Devine. Teacher assistant at Holloman, Kelly Stevenson. Foreign language teacher at Tollgate, Alicia Likos. Building support at Holloman at Gorton, Chrissy Arnone. And finally, in the capital and construction projects, Jenny French. Congratulations to all.
Thank you, Ms. Ruggieri. Congratulations to our January Spotlight winners. And at this time, I'd ask Principal Gibbons to come down to the microphone. We have a couple individuals being recognized tonight from one of the top two high schools in the city of Warwick.
Absolutely correct.
Picked up on that. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you very much for having me here this evening. Toby Gibbons, principal at Pilgrim High School, and I'm extremely honored to be here. I consider it a wonderful blessing to be the principal of Pilgrim High School every day, and I truly appreciate it. One of the reasons is for the students that we have. The major reason is, and we are honoring 3 of them tonight. And to wax poetically about them, I'm going to ask their choral director at Pilgrim High School, Jackie Soares, to come up and say some words.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gibbons. Good evening, school committee members. Since 2014, the Pilgrim High School Choral Department has sent students to regional and national events, meaning they would need to audition to be the best out of the country and out of the region for vocalists. And every year from the NAFME Nationals, we've gotten anywhere from 1 to 5 students in each year between the nationals and the regionals. And this year, for our NAFME Eastern region, we only had 3 Rhode Island members make this ensemble, and 1 member is here tonight, our very own Audrey Kiawa, if you could stand up, Audrey, who made the National All-Eastern Honor Choir. Audrey has been in the program for 4 years and has done Easterns. This is her 2nd Eastern, and the reason why she got in was because she ranked the 3rd highest out of all altos in the state of Rhode Island, and that put her in the running for making this very prestigious event for our Eastern region. And now I'm so proud of my 3 students, and this is the first year I have put any students up for the National American Choral Director Association. I've done regional work, but the national is the top and the best of the best in the entire nation when it comes to choral music. This is the first year where I went out on a ledge and I said, all right, kids, who thinks that they are ready to audition? And from 3,000 students from all around the country, we have 2 students that made the all-national honor choir. It is the biggest honor I have received since being at Pilgrim High School, and I'm so proud to announce both Allie Cameron and Addison Eaton made the national honor choir. Stand on up, girls. In addition to this, they're only in 10th grade. I can only imagine where their futures lie, as the 3 of these ladies here are going to represent Pilgrim so well. In March 18th through the 22nd, Allie and Addison will be flying to Dallas, Texas to perform with the best of the best out of the entire country. And Audrey will be going to Connecticut on April 24th through the 27th to perform with the best of the region. I'd like to remind you that New York is New York and New Jersey are some of the best musicians out of the entire country, and Audrey is going to be singing with some of the best in this absolute region. And I'm so proud of these three girls. And if we could just give one more round of applause for Allie Cameron, Addison Eaton, and Audrey Kiawa. Thank you so much.
If we could, the committee would be honored to take a picture with your three award winners and you and Principal Gibbons. So. Congratulations. Enjoy Texas. It's a great state. Congratulations. I'll join Principal Gibbons. Maybe it'll help me look a little better.
You're looking thinner.
Audrey, you're blocking the source. There you go. There we go. All right. Mr. Kelly, can you scooch in just a little bit?
Wiggins, he bothers me.
Big smile. 1, 2, 3. Wait a minute. I am sorry. All the pictures. Would you mind looking over here? Thank you. Thank you, guys. Perfect. Thank you. We're good.
I'll airdrop the kids.
Congrats again. Congrats. That's awesome. Thank you very much for doing a great job and representing us well. Appreciate it. One of the best high schools. Thank you
So much.
Congrats, please. Have fun.
Sean, let me shut off the microphone.
All right, at this time I'd be looking for a vote to go into closed session for discussion and or action regarding those items of business exempt from open meetings under general laws of Rhode Island, RIGL 42-46-5A1, A2, A4, A8, and A9.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa and Ms. Hazelwood, seconded by Mr. Wiggins. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? We're in closed session. Time is now 7 p.m. on Tuesday, February 11th. I'm calling to order the meeting of the Warwick School Committee. This time we'll return to open session. Can I have a motion to seal the minutes of executive session?
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa, seconded by Mr. Wiggins. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? There were no votes taken in executive session. Before we go on to public comment, I just ask that we briefly take a moment of silence for Jamari Thomas, a fifth grader at Oakland Beach who passed away on February 3rd. Thank you. At this time, we'll move to public comment on agenda items. Individual comments will be respectfully limited to 3 minutes per person, with public comment not to exceed 45 minutes. Though the content of comments will not be restricted, it is the hope of this committee that citizens, committee members, and the administration alike will be respectful of each other's right to speak, tolerant of different points of view, and mindful of everyone's time. This public comment period is for agenda items only. A second public comment session is available later in the meeting for all other topics or concerns. Members of the public are permitted to speak during both of the public comment periods. Speakers are asked to state their name for the record. For those new to our meetings, we use the podium down here to my left, your right. After one speaker is done, the next person can just get up. So are there any members of the public wishing to comment? It's a standoff. Who's going to win?
Thank you, Darlene. Tracy McDermott, Warwick city resident, taxpayer, teacher assistant, Warwick Public Schools for about 24 years. I am looking at the draft of the 5-year plan and have questions which I know you can't answer, but I am hoping that when you do the presentations that my questions will be answered. Because again, I have concerns about the pension, the WISE pension. First of all, we've got a page here, potential pension cuts, actuarial recommendation contribution. And it has sort of a description of the two components of the ARC. Except nowhere that I could find on here does it say what the actual number is, the actuarial recommended contribution, the annual recommended contribution. We've been a little all over the place since, I'm going to say 2019, the last time the city council attempted to take a very large portion of the WISE pension. Since then, we have been funded at 0, at 500,000, at 800,000, $1.8 million. We're sort of all over the place. We used to have a pretty steady stream of contributions. So if we could just kind of clarify that. My other question is, we've got on here 8 different scenarios of contribution, starting from $1 million the first year, 0, 0 in scenario 1, and then we've got $1.4 million, and then 0, 0 scenario 2. Scenario 3, we've got 3 contributions, 2 of which are fairly large. The 1.4 that was supposed to be contributed last year that never was, that 4 out of 5 members of the school committee voted in the budget to contribute that money in 2024, and it never happened. Whether it's a relief or not that that's still, in the kitty, the voters, the taxpayers, the WISE union members expected that money to be contributed. You did vote for it. The final line item on all of these scenarios, all 8 of them, every single bottom line in 3 years, the payments are different. We go from either $1 million over 3 years, that scenario where there's 3 different numbers paid out per year totals to $4.246.5 million. The last scenario 8 is 0, 0, and then 3.5 million. Scenario 6, 0, 0, 2.5 million. We're all over the place. It's like we're taking spaghetti and throwing it against the wall and seeing what sticks. I'm very confused as to why there are so many different numbers and why the bottom line payout
30 seconds.
in 3 years is not equal on all of them. I mean, scenario 3 or 4, you could take any one of those numbers and diminish it by a little bit, pay $1 million each year, and you're going to be at $3 million. But at least you're paying into the pension each year. So the 0, 0 in 2 out of 3 years, all of those scenarios, I mean, how anybody thinks we're going to have an available $3.5 million after 3 years is not looking at the federal government's thought of cutting the Department of Education and the amount of federal funding we're going to lose and the state is going to have to pick up. And we're hoping that we have $3.5 million extra to put in the WISE pension.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Darlene Netco. I'll say it. Lifelong resident of Warwick, homeowner, taxpayer. I say that because we're all taxpayers, and there are certain people who like to hold that over everybody else. Just a reminder, we all pay taxes here. 37 years in the classroom, 35 in Warwick. I want to talk about the MLL regulations, proposed changes from RIDE. I talked about this last month, but it was postponed. Unfortunately, the time to submit commentary to RIDE ended, but it was posted in here, and I did send out a message to my members if they did want to comment to do it by January 20th, and I went to one of the public hearings so I could speak in person. I believe that the MLL regulations do need to be updated to make sure that we are appropriately educating all of our multilingual learners. I myself got an ESL endorsement back in 1992. I never used it, but back then it was called ESL. And all of our students deserve to be educated properly. The problem I have with this RIDE proposal is that they are saying that all teachers have to be either proficient or aware in MLL instruction. And we are going down the same horrible path that RIDE took us with the Right to Read Act, where certain teachers had to be aware and certain teachers had to be proficient. I, as a high school English teacher, only had to be aware. So all I had to do was this Bridge RI thing. I'll call it a thing. It was 5 modules. I mean, it took a while. It wasn't nothing. It took a while. But in my opinion, the first module would have made me aware. And to be proficient, the rest of the people, our K through 12 special ed and our K through 5 teachers, classroom teachers, could have done the whole thing and been proficient. Instead, our K through 3 teachers did letters, and now our grades 4 and 5 and our special ed teachers are all doing Reading Reimagined, which is a little bit less onerous than letters, but they're both still very time-consuming, in-depth programs that take a lot of time, and not just time that the district
30 seconds.
And not just time that the district can provide. So here's another unfunded mandate from RIDE that teachers don't have the, to use the term, bandwidth to deal with, especially our elementary teachers with the the SEL and all of the curricula that they are currently using, Wit and Wisdom, GEMSNet, and the iReady. Enough is enough. And that is what I told RIDE. And so I figured I would just repeat that here. Enough is enough. RIDE, it's a public meeting, so I won't say what I want to say about RIDE.
Thank you, Ms. Netco. Are there any other members of the public wishing to comment? Any other members of the public wishing to comment? Any other members of the public wishing to comment? Seeing none, we're on to recommended actions, routine matters. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes of public session on January 14th, 2025.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Looking for an approval of minutes of executive session on January 14th, 2025.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa. Seconded by Mr. Wiggins. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Looking for an approval of minutes of public session January 28th, 2025.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa. Seconded by Mr. Wiggins. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Looking for approval of minutes of public session January 30th, 2025.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa, seconded by Mr. Wiggins. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Looking for approval of transfer February 11th, 2025.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa, seconded by Mr. Wiggins. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next is looking for a motion of approval of warrants February 11th, 2025.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa, seconded by Mr. Wiggins. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries 5-0. At this time, we're on to announcements. Personnel is presented. Ms. Ruggieri.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the school committee. We have one retirement to put before you tonight for a vote. We say goodbye to Jason Almeida, physical education and health APE teacher at Warwick Veterans Middle School.
Looking for a motion to approve the retirement resignation as presented.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa and Ms. Hazelwood, seconded by Mr. Wiggins. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? None. Motion passes. I just want to wish Mr. Almeida all the best and thank him for his time with the school district. Anyone else? Ms. Hazelwood.
Mr. Almeida has made his mark in Warwick. He served for 29 years, and he is so beloved in our community, beloved by everyone. It's a great loss for Warwick. So we wish him all the best, he and his family, and nothing but the best in the future.
Thank you, Ms. Hazelwood. Anyone else? Seeing none. Ms. Ruggieri.
Thank you. I ditto all the comments of the members. We have 3 resignations that also need a vote. We say goodbye to Emily West, special educator at Norwood Elementary School, Wendy Weiss, clerk at Tollgate High School, and Terry Fossa, the controller in the administration.
Looking for a motion to approve the resignations as presented. Made by Mr. Testa and Ms. Hazelwood. Seconded by Mr. Wiggins. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. And now the courtesy announcement to welcome a few new members to Warwick Public Schools. First, we welcome Emily DeLuca, elementary social worker at Welk. Jessica Malo, elementary school secretary at Sherman Elementary School. And Corey Goldsboro, teacher assistant 1-on-1 at Pilgrim High School. And also the coaches as presented in your executive packet. We welcome everybody to the district and know that our door is always open for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jerry, and welcome to all of our new employees, and best wishes to all of our spring coaches and their teams. At this time, we're on to donations and correspondences. There is a donation from Carty's Furniture for Gorton Administration Building, so we want to thank Carty's Furniture for that very kind donation. And there's a donation from the Autism Project, Karen Skirka, to Cedar Hill in the amount of $100 for books for inclusion. So thank you to Ms. Skirka and the Autism Project for that very kind donation to Cedar Hill. We are now on to adoption of policies first read. If there's no objections from my colleagues, I'd be looking to take these as a packet. Any objection? Seeing none, I'd be looking for a motion to move for approval on policy GBN, disqualification of job applicants with criminal convictions, and policy IJN, artificial intelligence AI use. Motion made by Mr. Testa, seconded by Mr. Wiggins. Anybody have any comments on the policies?
Chair?
Mr. Testa.
If I may, on GBN, disqualification job applicants, the fourth paragraph was completely removed, where it said it required employees to notify HR of any indictment or arrest within 24 hours. Why was that removed? Is that?
Would you like to direct that question to the policy chair or a member of the administration?
Whoever. Sorry.
Ms. Murray.
Okay. Can you hear me okay? Yes.
Yes.
All right. So what we decided to do is take out that paragraph. What we're going to do as a policy committee is make a separate policy for employees. We wanted to keep them separate in terms of what we covered. Most of the legal references were around BCI checks. So we will be moving forward with an employee policy.
Excellent. Thank you. Answered my question.
Thank you. Any other questions concerning the policies before us for first read? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Those two policies pass 5-0. Ms. Tedeschi. Next, we have a policy for elimination. Policy ACA Final Rule, Title IX Policy and Grievance Procedure. Looking for a motion to move approval. Made by Ms. Hazelwood, seconded by Mr. Wiggins. Any comments from members of the committee? I would just remark, obviously, when this first came before us 2 months ago or a month ago, I'm a firm believer in what's legal is legal, or what is the law is the law. In the case there, we obviously passed the policy to be in compliance with what the law was, and then of late, the past couple weeks here, obviously we're now having to change up how we operate. So that's my only comment on this. I know that some people might question why we would have eliminated it. So if you're not following intimately everything that's going on at the federal level and kind of rule changes or laws, that this is why. So again, operating in compliance with the law, because that's what's expected of us. So anyone else with any other comments? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries 5-0. On to new business. Discussion presentation, MLL new regulations. Ms. Sutherland.
Yes, my name is not Miss Sutherland, but I just wanted to introduce Mrs. Sutherland.
Oh, switching it up. That's
Yes.
fine. A little surprise.
So we're very fortunate to have Tracy on our team. She is the multilingual learner coordinator. She has been a teacher and an excellent member of the MLL staff for the past 7 years until this year when she moved into the administrative role. I just want to introduce her. She has a lot of very interesting information to say this evening.
I'm just turning it on. Hi, it's nice to see you all. So today I'm here to go over the proposed regulations from RIDE. So these regulations have not yet been passed, but they are proposed. Why propose new regulations? Let's start there. So the regulations that are in effect as of now were written in 2007, so they're quite old, and they no longer meet federal requirements, and they are not inclusive of nationally recognized best practices. And a few years ago, you probably remember that the Department of Justice got really involved in Providence Public Schools, and a lot of the reason why they were able to do that was because of these regulations not being in compliance. So RIDE has proposed new regulations this year. To look at Rhode Island specifically, I thought this was super interesting, came straight from RIDE. We have the #1 growth in the nation between 2010 and 2020 for multilingual learners. And we are right up there with states like Texas and California, which is a little bit shocking, I think. Looking at Warwick specifically, across the state, the average increase of multilingual learners in a district is 105%. We're at 171% from school year 13 to 23. So again, a bit more of an increase than we're seeing for the state average. And in Warwick specifically, last school year, we ended up with 253 MLLs. You see 292. That was the number when I had to submit this presentation, but that's already changed. So I believe we're up to 299 now, and that was in the last week or so. So back in 92, 93, we had 46 MLLs. And you can see that the numbers are growing rapidly, especially in the last 5 years or so. Again, RIDE is proposing these regulations this year. So this year is the planning year. Here we are, planning. And they're still developing the regulations. As Ms. Netko mentioned earlier, the public comment period is over. So RIDE is now taking all of those comments and drafting or revising some of the regulations that they've already proposed. Once they get approved, if they get approved, the expectation is that all LEAs would have 5 years to meet all of the requirements that they're putting forth. And so next school year would be the first year of implementation, and then in 5 years, we would be expected to be fully compliant with all of the new regulations. When I reviewed them, I sort of saw 6 themes or priorities that RIDE was mentioning, so I'm gonna go through them quickly for you today. Staff and service time go hand in hand. So right now we have me, the MLL coordinator and coach, and we have 11 MLL teachers and a part-time clerical support person. Over the next 5 years, in order to meet the service time regulations that RIDE is proposing, and to make sure that students are getting equitable service, whether it's secondary to elementary or across elementaries, we would need to hire 6 additional MLL teachers, transition the coordinator to administrator, and allow all MLLs to attend their home schools, which is something that we've worked at specifically last year and this year, and we're getting much, much better at than we used to be. So again, all these items listed here are in order to be in compliance with the new proposed regulations. Another piece of it was family support, and so they're looking for an MLL family liaison, someone to support MLL families when they first enroll and throughout their time in Warwick. We would look for an increase in MLL clerical support because, again, these numbers are growing very, very rapidly, and the continued use of the Elevations platform, which is a way to track data, track a lot of the federally required items that are required, and communicate with families and teachers. In terms of translation and interpretation, we are already using things like Google Translate and other free technology tools. This year, we were lucky enough to get 2 different devices. If those seem to work out and we feel that they'd be beneficial, purchase of another one would be something that we would certainly look into, because ultimately we're just looking to ensure that our multilingual families are getting the same access to their children's education as our monolingual families would. Along those same lines, we also use over-the-phone interpretation right now and in-person interpretation services when we need to. We would continue that use and just make sure that that's, again, being used consistently for every family that needs it. And one idea that's been tossed around is potentially contracting modern world language teachers to do some translating, especially in Spanish, maybe French, and some other languages as well. That's something that other districts have experimented with and have found to be successful. So that's something that is a potential. As far as integration goes, previously in the regulations, MLLs were to be considered, but sort of like their own separate entity, where now RIDE is really pushing the idea that MLLs are a part of our district and just a part of our fabric altogether. So really, in order to build those strong relationships with MLL families, we're looking to, again, increase that interpretation and translation and accessibility, but also give the staff some professional development around engaging culturally and linguistically diverse families, especially as these numbers continue to grow. Again, just making sure that our families have a voice. The MLL coordinator would participate in the district strategic planning committee to just make sure that they're sort of a constant and that's thought of through all of the different parts of that process. And all schools would have an MLL family member on their school improvement team to ensure that, again, they have that voice throughout the district. In terms of curriculum, RIDE is suggesting that we purchase a RIDE-approved curriculum for the English language development block, which is the service time that MLL teachers give our MLL students. There has not been much guidance about that at this time from RIDE, but we can assume that we would pilot the curricula. We would then decide on a curriculum, purchase it, have the training that goes along with it so our teachers could be successful, and then always evaluate its effectiveness. Again, as Ms. Netko mentioned earlier, all educators would be required to complete MLL readiness training. So it does sound a little bit like Right to Read. I also imagine it's a little bit like SEI, which Massachusetts started maybe 10 to 15 years ago now. And so they're looking for all teachers to either get MLL proficiency or awareness. And that's something that, again, we would work on. There, again, hasn't been a lot of guidance on that from RIDE at this time. We have for years now funded MLL teachers to get their MLL certification through the Roger Williams Fast Track program. We would continue to do that this year and for the next 5 years. There's a lot I just went over, and a lot of different challenges, and there's going to be a lot of problem solving that has to happen, but I think ultimately it's going to be a great opportunity for a lot of different departments to really work together and support our multilingual learners. And so that, to me, is a very exciting part. Questions?
Are there any questions from members of the committee? Mr. Test.
Thank you. I always have questions. Thank you, Ms. Sunderland. So at the end of the day, in 5 more years, MLL will be a department within any school district. And it's going to be a standalone department, pretty much, right? I don't have any issues with MLL. I think we may have undercounted that population here, and I think that's probably why we're seeing such a spike, at least in Warwick. Yep. So the other districts that, say at Cranston has are they ahead of the game, or is this game changing for everybody?
The game is changing for everybody. I would say that some districts are ahead, some districts are not. It really depends on the population. So one thing that I did just last week was meet with different directors, East Providence, North Providence, Woonsocket, I'm trying to think of the other ones, Cumberland and Johnston. And most of them have similar populations. And in one way they were doing things and I'm saying, how did you get this far already? And then the next sentence I'm saying something and they're saying the same thing to me. So I think it all kind of depends. We're all working on it together. What I will say is that Warwick is not in compliance with the current regulations. Neither is almost any other district in Rhode Island. So in that way, we're not any different. Of course, I would love for us to be better.
Yeah, so the way I look at this, I mean, you have to hire 6 new staff at least, right, in 5 years, and additional support staff, plus curriculum. This will be $1 million proposition at least within 5 years, right? And it's kind of leading to the point where, of course, it's a good thing, right? But if RIDE's going to do this, they've got to put some money behind it. You can't put this on the burden of the district. And I'm not just talking about Warwick, I'm talking about any district, because this will be significant for districts that are seeing a demographic change. I think Warwick's seen a demographic change too. So I get it. I would just hope that the people in the General Assembly and RIDE reflect this in aid to education, because if we're left to do this on our own, it's going to get pretty ugly. I speak generically for districts, so thank you very much.
Of course, and if I could just add one thing, it will be exactly what you're stating, but we do get Title III, and what used to be called categorical is now called MLL funding aid, and that is per MLL student. And so we have seen some increase in those numbers with more students. So that's the silver lining.
Okay, good. And you mentioned grants and some of the opportunities too. So it's going to probably change a bit of the way of thinking that we have as an administration, I would assume, right? And I think it's going to be a bit of a change in thought throughout the entire ranks of the school department, right? Because if we're seeing this growing number of MLL students, that can shock a culture. So we have to be prepared for that. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the committee looking to comment? I just have one. On slide 7, the roadmap, since joining the district and kind of taking this on, have you had an opportunity to perform somewhat of a gap analysis to the proposed regulations and kind of our biggest gaps? And then have you had the opportunity to then also triage those and determine like which ones are most critical for you to then build your system on?
Yes, to a point. I think there are some like curriculum and that readiness training for staff that RIDE has given. Essentially, that's all we know, is that those two things are going to be required. So there's not a lot that I know and am able to do that for. But in terms of service time, definitely. In the other pieces, translation, interpretation, it's a difficult thing to do, honestly, because it's, you're comparing, do I want families to have more access to their kids' education and more notices going home in a home language, or do I want their children to have more service time? That's a tough choice to make. So the way that I sort of approached it over the next 5 years was to tackle a little bit of everything at the same time, so that we're slowly chipping away, but we are chipping away. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Any other comments from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. The next item, discussion presentation, Learn 365 Vacation Club, MOY, January 2025. Ms. Cousineau.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and other members of the school committee. I'm excited to bring you our collaboration in partnership with the Boys and Girls Club. As you may or may not recall, this is a grant-funded program, and we are now in year 2, Paul, Mr. Heatherton? Year 2. And we are very excited to bring you some increases in services that we have had this year. If I can figure this remote out, I'm not very good with remotes, so here we go. There we go. All right, so just to take you back a little bit, this is in conjunction with the governor's office. Governor McKee was a Boys and Girls Club kiddo himself, and he prioritizes with some money in the Learn 365 grant. Our school year, as we know, is only 180 days, so wouldn't it be super cool if we could come up with some sort of program to be able to share learning and teaching with our kids more than just 180 school days? So a few of us put our heads together about a year ago, and we came up with this program. We partnered with the Boys and Girls Club, and we partnered with, could you track that, please? And we partnered with the Norwood Club for 2 learning opportunities for our students again this year. And I'll go into a few more details. So new this year, we did have a tutoring program last year, but we only had 2 tutors. We had 2 phenomenal teachers from Lippert who were going over to the Norwood Club twice a week. They were providing 8 students with an hour of math and an hour of ELA. They do have access to our iReady scores, which are our diagnostic scores, to support them in areas of concern. And they built rapport and relationships with those kids, and it was a very successful year. This year, we're excited to say that we now have approximately 35 students in the program, and we now have more than 8 tutors. We also moved from the Norwood Club, and we now have it at both clubs, the Norwood Club and the Oakland Beach Club. So we're servicing 9 elementary schools that feed into these clubs. We are doing this after school from about 3:30 to 4:30 on any given day. So again, the tutoring program is 2 times a week, an hour for ELA, writing, and math. We are doing it from November to June. We are pretty much right at the halfway point, so we're actually not servicing students this week. This is our data check week. All the diagnostic scores are in, so our teachers are getting on some Google Meets with me, and we're looking at all the scores, and we're recreating groups. So for example, if Mr. Tester is doing exceptionally well this time, we might scooch him out of the group, and we might put somebody else into the group. Again, 9 elementary schools, and we are using our iReady data. We also have a second prong of this Learn 365 grant, and we are doing vacation clubs. And shout out to our 5 teachers who are going to be working next week on school vacation. We partner with just the Norwood Club over school break. The Oakland Beach Club is more of a real vacation with sports and such, but the Norwood Club has an educational component. So we have 3 classrooms, a K1, a 2-3, and a 4-5. We have anywhere from 8 to 21 students, and we have approximately 2 to 3 teachers, and we have some amazing paraprofessionals that work for the Boys and Girls Club who sit in on our classes and sort of help out with whatever tasks we need them to help out with. So here's some data for the student protection. We've taken off all sorts of names. And just to give you a quick little preview, the color code system that hopefully you can see is our green, dark green kids are on or above grade level. And then it kind of tapers down from there. There is a light green version, and then there is a bright yellow version, which is kind of 1 year behind, and then kind of a light yellow, which is a little bit further. And then our kind of brick color are our red kiddos, and then they are 2 or more years below grade level. The BOY stands for beginning of year, and the MOY stands for mid-year. So those are the 2 data points that we have so far. And you can see that we've had a nice increase on ELAs on the left and math is on the right. You can see that we've had 3 students substantially go up in the ELA section, all the way up to green, although we're very proud of our yellow friends as well, and so on and so forth. So this is Holloman School, which attends the Norwood Club. This is Hoxie School, which also attends the Norwood Club. And we did put a little more information on some of these where you can see it was like one kiddo on the right for math was a mid-4, and now he's a high 4. So again, some great growth. And with the iReady platform, we can drill down to the exact content that you need to work on. We're just going to call it fractions for math. I can go through the rest of the slides, but they're all very similar. Wyman feeds into the Norwood Club. Again, lots of green in those middle columns there. The Lippett School goes into the Oakland Beach Club. Park feeds into the Oakland Beach Club. Again, lots and lots of yellows and greens, which we're so excited for. Robertson feeds into the Oakland Beach Club as well. Sherman feeds into the Oakland Beach Club, and Workneck is in the Oakland Beach Club. So right now we have 4 schools in each club. We're adding Wyman for this next round. So we'll be picking up some Wyman students as of the week after vacation. We'll start again. We couldn't possibly do it without our incredible partners, so we made a little word cloud of all of the teachers who support this program, from the tutors to the teachers, and then our Boys and Girls Club partners. We love Lara, our CEO, and Monique and Bobby, who are the coordinators over at the Boys and Girls Club. And we can't forget our behind-the-scenes people like Karen and Joanne and Mr. Heatherton. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Cousineau. Any questions from members of the committee? Mr. Testa.
Thank you. I have, I think it's one. So some of the methodologies that are used in the tutoring, is that the same kind of thing we use in the classroom too, or are these tactics or whatever the word is?
Strategies.
Strategies. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That are just used here in these programs.
Yeah, so the Vacation Club is more of a STEM camp. I apologize, I should have said that earlier, with sort of like 8 to 10 kiddos in a group with a different adult. But the tutoring is really a drill down. The tutoring is no more than 4 to 5 students in the group, and we really hone in on their splintered skills so that we're certainly able to work on writing. As I said, there's always fractions in math, decimals when you get into grades 4 and 5. But those iReady reports are so important. And we do realize it's only one data point, so we're actually already talking about next year, maybe triangulating and looking at some extra data. I know both Amy and Ariana over in the curriculum department have some ideas about how we can get some more data involved next year as well.
Cool, thank you.
Any other? We'll go with Ms. Hazelwood, and then we'll go to Mr. Wiggins.
Are you sure you can?
Oh, please, you.
I have a question, and without pointing to bringing up anything, when we see a significant decline with one student, what steps do we take?
That's a great question. So all of our students receive Tier 1 instruction. Tier 1 is the entire class. And the one elementary teacher would be responsible for everybody at this table. This is our school family, this is our class. So everybody gets tier 1. And then let's say you start to show some signs of some struggle. So we take you to the leadership team. We might have put a 504 in place or an IEP. We might just know that your learning style is a little bit different and you don't do well on multiple choice. Maybe you do better on this or that. Or you can build me anything. And so that's how you show how well you do. So that's sort of a tier 2 kind of a student. And then we move up from there to a tier 3. So it really depends on the needs of the students. And again, our teachers are such experts that they have a handle on all of this and they do a fabulous job. Some of those students there, they do have 504s, which is a general ed program to support with accommodations and modifications based on a diagnosis that they might have. And some of our students have IEPs, which require specialized instruction. But again, our tutors know this. Our Learn 365 Vacation Club teachers know this, and it just kind of helps them to meet the child where they're at.
And I think it's so important that we do have all of this to get together available.
Absolutely.
What they're doing, I mean, that's going to help way beyond what they're doing there. It's going to carry over into the classroom.
It sure will. That's what we're
as well.
hoping.
Yeah.
That's what we're
So,
hoping.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much for
Thank
the
you.
explanation.
Mr. Wiggins.
You actually answered my question when you're talking about the IEPs and the collaboration.
Okay.
But I do want to applaud the program as a whole.
Thank you.
Especially, you mentioned the STEM program. That is, I've seen it firsthand, and Melissa does an incredible job in what they do over there. So kudos to what the program is.
Thank you. It is exciting, and we want them to make them to feel like they're learning by doing. Again, those experiences, it's not all paper and pencil tasks. It's, that productive struggle and that grit and that stamina and trying to nope, you got this. You know what? We're just going to back up. We're going to try something different. Okay, let's go take a break. We got this. We're professionals.
No, fantastic. Fantastic job.
Thank you. Any other comments from members of the committee? No? Just want to say thank you to the Boys and Girls Club, awesome partners in the community. So.
Absolutely. And I'll share this presentation with them tomorrow. I wanted you all to see it first. So Lara and the girls will have the presentation tomorrow, as well as the tutors and the teachers.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, we're ready to party with a little presentation on Rave, as presented by Mr. Magiacomo.
Can you hear me? Dan Magiacomo, District Coordinator of Safety and Security. Members of the committee, Mr. Chair, Superintendent Danbrook, thanks for having me tonight. I am going to be brief. What we're going to do is we're going to discuss a brief overview of what the Rave panic button is in the district. I don't mean to keep turning this way, but I don't like to have my back to the audience, so kind of just bear with me. So the Rave panic button, if you're not familiar with it, if you're sitting at home watching, the Warwick School Department now has the technology through our smartphones to communicate during critical incidents, during emergencies inside of our schools. I was fortunate enough to do some work with the committee prior to and the school administration, and it was just something that we needed to bring to the district. So I'm going to give you a quick overview as far as how it works and how we've used it in the district, and want to say how it's successful up to this point. A couple quick videos just to give you an overview. Maybe not. Do you want me to? There we go.
In today's world, time is everything, especially during an emergency. When a critical situation occurs, every second matters. How do you know when and where an emergency is happening? How quickly are you informing others about an incident? How can you help 911 handle an influx of emergency calls? Do first responders know what's happening before they arrive on scene? How do they know what resources they need? Do they know the closest and safest access point to the emergency? The Rave Panic Button app is fully integrated with 911 centers, With a push of a button, the Panic Button app begins a communication workflow, instantly connecting you with 911, first responders, and necessary personnel, streamlining your emergency response. The app delivers critical response data, including details about the type of emergency and the location to 911 and first responders for a more coordinated response. First responders can quickly determine where to go and who needs help as they arrive on scene. An alert also automatically triggers mass notifications, digital signage, and more. Live streaming video allows 911 and first responders to view an emergency in real time to gather more critical information. Key stakeholders can initiate status checks with those at the scene to find out what's happening, where they are located, and who is injured. The Staff Assist feature allows authorized employees to communicate non-emergency information, such as minor medical incidents, security disruptions, and administrative updates to specific groups without calling 911. A customized content directory gives employees, teachers, and staff access to important information like active assailant incident procedures, wellness guidelines, and quarantine protocols, so they'll be ready to act when the time comes. Stakeholders like you can also perform wellness checks with employees. Communicating instantly will improve your response times. The Panic Button mobile app is Safety Act certified by the Department of Homeland Security and the only solution with statewide deployments. You'll have the confidence knowing that you are doing all that you can to keep people safe and informed. The Panic Button app helps keep everyone safe before, during, and after an emergency.
So one of the big things that was mentioned there was 911. 911 was mentioned multiple times. As we know, as educated adults, even children in our district, is that when we dial 911, who are the only other people that know about that emergency inside the school? If you have a large campus, say like a Pilgrim campus, when we dial 911, it's connected to 911 services. The room next door, the room down the hall, key administrators, other stakeholders don't know that there's an emergency inside the building. And I saw that as a concern. How are we getting that message out quickly? Some people will argue and say that panic buttons don't protect us all. It's not there to protect. It's there to give us information quickly to make sure that we know that there's an emergency on campus so that we can then respond and do what we were trained to do. All right, so the panic button acts as an emergency notification and gives capabilities to get that message out as fast as possible, also connected to first responders, the Warwick Police Department as well. I'm going to show you one more quick video. This is what the users will see. Holding down any one of those 5 critical incidents for a second and a half connects automatically. Prompts you to dial 911 and then sends the notifications out. It delivers 3 forms of notification: push notification, text messaging, and email as well to the department school email. So if, say for instance, you don't want the app on your phone, that's fine. You're still going to be able to receive a text message. You're still going to be able to receive that email, all depending on how you have your smartphone set up. Within a second and a half, like I said, the message is actually getting to the Warwick Police Department and getting out to our faculty and staff faster than dialing 911. Can you imagine dialing 911, waiting on the other line for somebody to answer? In that second and a half, as soon as that critical incident, 5 critical incidents, active shooter, police, fire, medical, and 911 other, in that second and a half, notifications being sent. All right, so that's how fast it's going to get out to the populations inside of the school. So who uses the panic button in the district? I'm going the wrong way. Sorry about that. All the way from central administration down to OTPT, virtual trainings, maintenance, transitions teams, Warwick School Department personnel on all different levels, command staff within the police department, fire department, EMS, parent forums. I've spent the past probably 1 year doing probably about 50 organized trainings for anybody that was willing to sit and listen to it. We've done it multiple times. I've done some schools multiple times, refresher trainings. People are on board with the technology and they're willing to use it. The amount of times that we've seen it used in the district already, we've used it just over 3.5 dozen times. And I can start to see a shift in the confidence and people's technology. When you heard that alert tone go off, it's startling, yes? We hear that alert because we're not used to it. It's something new. We want it to be startling. We want to hear that critical alert noise go off to let us know that there is something that serious, that it's connected to the police department, and that everybody needs to be prepared to deal with that type of emergency. Now, 99.9% of the time that we've used it in the district, it's been medically related, knock on wood. So I'm glad to say that those medical incidents, Rave has been used to communicate effectively throughout our schools, and to get those key stakeholders involved and to get personnel from the Warwick Police Department, Warwick Fire Department on scene rapidly. We used Rave at probably about 2 weeks now over at Scott Elementary School. We had a medical situation over at the school, and a teacher was the first one to utilize the Rave panic button. And it is something that takes a little bit of initiative. I'm going to be the first one to push the button inside of my school. I get it. However, she was the first teacher to use the button, and she used it effectively. She pushed the button at, I want to say, 12:13 in the afternoon. By 12:16, one of the first responders was already on scene. All right. How that's in conjunction with some other technology, I think it's important that you know as well. I am connected to the Warwick Police Department. I have capabilities to communicate with them directly. During a critical incident, say for instance that's not within one of our campuses, say for instance it's outside of Warwick Vets. There's something going on, police activity, there's a bank robbery down the street and it's in close proximity to a school. With Rave Panic Button, I have the capability from anywhere in the district to actually send a message out to any schools that may be affected, to let them know that there's a significant emergency somewhere within their campus area, and give them the protocols or the security levels that need to change at that given time. It is that fast and it's that effective. All right, so it has opened up those emergency communications dramatically, and it's in conjunction with the rest of the protocols that we have in the district. So why use the panic button? It's really that force multiplier. It gives us immediate notification, as I just mentioned, the increased response time, which is proven. I've had the capability to hear rescue be dispatched and then kind of be able to game it from my office. If you can picture having a dispatch console in my office that's monitored, whether it's through my radio or it's through my screens, having that capability to actually communicate back and forth with the school to let them know the rescue's on scene, it's at the back door. Those things are happening inside of the schools, and our faculties and staff, they're getting confident with using it, so it's a good sign. On-demand resources. If you're an app user and have the app on your phone, you have easy access, push-button access to District All Hazards Plan, floor maps in case of an emergency and you're trapped inside of a building, your school individual safety plan, faculty rosters to do a head count if there was an emergency and we needed to get that information. Administrators will have access to reunification points and evacuation routes. All the things that you can imagine that you might need in a hurry when you don't have your Chromebook handy, all comes through this smartphone app now, all right? And it's at the ready for you to use. Location of a specific area during a critical incident. If the app is used inside of the auditorium here at Warwick Vets, it will be pinpointed to inside of the building, and that's all done through geofencing, electronic geofencing. However, there are locations built on campus, and you'll see on the map shortly, that will identify where you are outside the facility. Okay, so if you're outside the facility, say on the playground, and you happen to use it, messaging is being sent specifically to where you are in that school, and it's also being sent to first responders so that they can get those services to that location faster. It doesn't make any sense that there's an emergency inside of the auditorium, or there's an emergency outside of the playground, and first responders are showing up to the front door and navigating through the entire school. They know that the emergency is located outside of the building. So connected services with the Warwick Police Department. Now this isn't Warwick in front of us, but this is a dispatch console considered Rave Command View. I monitor this 24/7. I will say it. I worked in a former employment where I was on call 24/7. That's what I signed up here for in the district, though. You know, so I have no issues with monitoring that dispatch console, monitoring my phone constantly, monitoring my radio as I do, because those messages are coming in through me. And then I'm kind of getting those services or that support out as necessary. This is something that the Warwick Police Department would see in front of them as well. So if you could picture an emergency happening, 5 critical incidents, one of those incidents happened inside of a location. If you look at that screen, that's simply just a Google Earth. When a police dispatcher comes into their seat for the day, they log into everything that they would normally log into. They also now log into Rave Command View. And what Rave Command View does is it gives them that information directly in front of them, gives them that loud audible, and they understand that there's a critical incident happening inside the school. Those small blue boxes that you see there are all campuses that I've designed, that we've designed in the district. Each one of those are geofenced with multiple locations on each campus. If there were an emergency to come in, say at Warwick Vets, that arrow's actually pointing to Warwick Vets. Upon activation of the Rave panic button, within a second and a half, the police department's going to get an audible tone, and critical information is going to come up on their screen, just like you can imagine they would get anything through a dispatch call, through 911. They're going to get that same messaging that's going to come through the RCV. A little bit closer view, there's the Warwick Vets campus. That blue line area, that's a geofence. If I'm within that geofence on school campus and I have my smartphone with me, if I activate the Rave panic button, Rave knows where I am. It is no secret that when we dial 911 and there's an emergency, we want 911 to know our location, to get that support to us that much faster. We also want the people on our campus to know that as well. So if I'm within that blue geofence, that messaging is going to go out. If I'm outside of the geofence, it acts strictly as a 911 button only. That messaging is not going to go out to your entire school population. All right. If you look really close, you can kind of see the red areas. Those red areas are all smaller areas on campus: faculty parking lots, student parking lots, athletic fields, stuff along those lines. If you were to use Rave at those locations, Rave will recognize that you're on those areas, and those can be changed at any given time. So we went fully operational. Rave was funded through the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which was grant funded. We were fortunate enough to win a grant. So it's not costing the district anything. This was a good purchase for the district. 1,581 employees. Just prior to, on May 17, 2024, I said a quick little prayer after we did all the rollout, and I pushed the button, and it went out to 1,581 people in a second and a half. All right, it was that fast. The comments that I received afterwards, and still up to this date, you see them right up there, and that's not all of them. I received the alert. That wasn't scary. I feel much better knowing that we have this product. It's much better than the first time. It's not that it's much better than the first time. It was just rolled out different. Those of you that remember that have been around for a little while, we had Rave in the past. What we were focused on was putting an app or asking to put an app on people's phones, on workers' phones. That's what we were asking. We should have been looking at the opposite. We should have been looking at, you're a Warwick school employee, we want you to get notification. But we want you to get all the perks that come with the app as well. So if you have the app, awesome. We encourage you to put the app on your phone. But even if you don't have it, you're still going to receive notification that there's an emergency on campus. And that's what we should have been focused on. So to get a message out to 1,581 people fast was very, very impressive. Obviously, I think we're a little bit higher than that. I think we probably have over 1,600 people now that have bought into the product, which is a good thing. I read the message and I knew what it meant and what to do. Those are all things that I want to hear from our faculty and staff. After the countless trainings that we've done, in conjunction with Rave, I want people to say, I heard it go off and I knew exactly what I was supposed to do at that given time. Other uses for Rave: non-critical, non-emergency at that level where everybody needs to be notified. We're now using Rave to send out non-emergency, if you can consider large group text messaging. Large text messaging that's also connected to the police department. It's just not delivered with that same type of sound, that same tone, the same type of urgency. Fire drills, shelters in place, restricted movement, and custom messaging. We've used it on multiple occasions, like I said, for medical purposes, for restricted movements often. All right. So once that messaging goes out, our faculty and staff, our school administrators know to change that security level in the school to protect the populations. All right. Special thanks, school committee. I think when I got hired here, going back almost 3 years now, I worked very closely with the school committee, and we knew that this was important. We needed to bring it back. The administrative team, Director of Elementary Education, Ms. Cosino, we worked constantly together on getting this out to the elementary schools. She played a big factor when it came around the first time, and she didn't bat an eyelash when it came time to do it again. Faculty and staff, my administrative team, really supporting it and saying, hey, this is a good thing. We need to continue to keep using it. Extra special thanks. Joe Napolo, Assistant Director of Technology, Julia Lowe, Data Specialist, and Jessica Kingston in Technology, all behind the scenes dealing with the data uploads. All the stuff that I'm really not too savvy with, they were there for me every single time to make sure that anytime there was changes or I needed that tech side of the house, they were dealing with it. The first rollouts with informational booklets on how we were getting the training done, they played a big factor, and I thank them for that. They made a huge help with getting this out to the rest of the district. With that being said, are there any questions of the committee?
Anyone with questions? Ms. Kirby Chapman?
Have you done, sorry if you said this, have you done this with every school, like practice drills?
When you mean practice,
Or like, have you worked with all
every
schools? With
every
Rave?
school every
Yeah.
school has had one, if not multiple, trainings on how to use Rave. As far as practicing, there hasn't been a level of practice. There has been testing done. We tested prior to the operation going live, and the constant refreshes are happening. There's actually a Google Classroom. I'm not sure. I figured that out. I think Joe Napolo played another intricate role in getting me to learn how to do a Google Classroom. There's a Google Classroom where everything exists as Rave. All the training materials is all there, so if you needed those resources, you know where to go find them. But we've done countless trainings and testing within the district, yes.
Have you had any hiccups?
There has been a hiccup,
Yeah.
and it was expected. We don't want to have hiccups, knock on wood, but we have had a hiccup. Somebody that was a little excited after we were using it for a fire drill decided to push a button. However, it was a quick one-on-one, and let's talk about what happened. To explain the reach of Rave, all right, it's used on campus in a non-emergency capabilities, and then change that to an emergency situation. The reach is just that much further. It's now connected to the police department, it's connected to the administration, as opposed to an individual school.
Was there any, when you associated with the police department, did they have training, or was it just
Yes.
was that easy?
So
Okay.
once again, myself and Joe Napolo, we actually went to the police department. If you can picture what that geofence looked like, I set a geofence around the police department. I sat upstairs in their Board of Public Safety with their command staff and some of their other key players, and I set up the police department just like it was a school. And I pushed a panic button, and within a second and a half, every one of their phones was alerting. The Rave command console lit up, dispatch downstairs was doing what they were supposed to be doing, and some of the comments from the command staff was, that was impressive. And it delivers the messaging as far as what you're dealing with. Now, it's not meant to replace. It doesn't replace what we would already know. So if we're dealing with stuff like the smell of gas in a building, Rave isn't going to be that specific, but you can still send messaging out based on that incident. What we want to do is we want to get that critical message out fast so that people can revert back to their training and do what they were taught how to do.
I mean, it's great. Have you had any, like, I want to say pushback at all from any?
Slight. So when we first started off, I expected some slight pushback, and I understood why. When we first rolled it out the first time, we were in a different time. That was back, I believe, Mr. Testa, what, six years ago? As a police officer, I was the one trying to pitch the product to the school department. And that wasn't the right time to do it. I was from an outside agency trying to push something on the Warwick School Department. It just didn't make sense. When I came to the school department, I am now part of this organization. I'm part of the team, so there was a need for it. And as we continued that message and talked about the benefits of having it, and we explained it a little bit more, people started to catch on. After we did the large test with the 1,581, people were more involved with saying, I want that on my phone. What did I miss out on? How come I don't have that? So as we started to get better using it, you saw a lot more people say, I want part of that technology. All right, I want to be part of that group.
Just because I feel like this question also might come up. Is there a parent participation or an acknowledgement in this at all?
Absolutely. We've done parent forums. I've been invited parents in. We've done nights at school where it wasn't revolving around Rave, and I was a guest speaker to talk about Rave. There's been a few of those. The virtual trainings were big. Those were mainly for faculty and staff, but the parent forums went over very well. We just did one the other night over at Cedar Hill Elementary School. And it was a small group that showed up, but to talk about this technology and say, this is what we have in the district now. This is what we've invested in. Their eyes were wide. They were impressed that we had this type of technology. From first responders, for them to realize that we're dealing with this type of technology, they were impressed as well. It's a Motorola product, so it's got backing to it. And I'm confident that the more that we use it, there'll be a time where we said we don't remember what it was like without this type of system in place.
But I mean, there's no alert to, because I know if
There
something
isn't.
happened, right, to parents.
There isn't. It's not connected to parents.
We'd have to do the same protocol that way.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. It's not connected to parents. It's meant strictly for Warwick School
Right.
employees.
Okay. I mean, thank you.
Yes. Ms. Cosino?
What I can add to that, because my schools use it quite often, is that the principal will send a message out to the parents. I know that was pretty much your question. So after the emergency, we do a restricted movement because we don't want our students to see a teacher in distress or whatever. We had that happen at a building today. And immediately we have some drafts of some letters. So we go through and we edit it, and then it goes home to either just that class. Today it happened to be 4th grade over at Sherman. The other day it was Scott School, as Danny said. So we have letters that we have the principals send home to let families know that at supper tonight, you know, if you say, hey, how was your day? And be like, I don't know, there was this loud noise, and then we had to all stop, and this and that, whatever. So the parents are aware that this has happened.
Thank you.
Anything else? Ms. Hazelwood?
And oftentimes, we on the committee don't find out that something is happening at one of our schools right away. There's a delay because we're relying on people for emails or text messages. Can we get this app on our phones and this training?
Yeah, so in your positions connected to the school, it's a no-brainer. It's something like that needs to get done. The way that Rave was rolled out, it was rolled out in stages. There was the design stage where we built the campuses. Then there was a training stage on who was going to be brought into those trainings. Those conversations are still being had. We're still saying, well, who else can we bring into the fold to get the support that we're going to need during that given time, to let people know that there was a critical incident. And that's still constantly evolving. My meeting last week, I spent a few days at the police department reviewing this technology, and we've talked about, God forbid, in an active threat situation, all uniform patrol having the capabilities to get those alerts as well. But having committee as well into that group, I don't see a problem with it at all. I really don't. But
it also takes the burden off the administration to always have to contact us when something's going on. They already have plenty of things to do. And this would be one less thing because then when they don't get it to us in a prompt time, sometimes we're a bit concerned about the communication. This would take that away from them, where they wouldn't have to, answer if they don't get it out in time, which they have enough to do, especially lately.
I agree.
Ms. Cousineau, did you have?
Thank you. My comment was going to be, I am partly responsible for that, since I do have myself or my secretary let you know as soon as we know, and we always usually say, like, we'll notify you when it's all clear kind of thing. So we do come back with that second email. I think even if you got the Rave app, you'd still be getting emails from me. So just as a follow-up to let you know that the principal and the nurse will reach out to so-and-so tonight at dinner time or whatever. So just think keeping the lines of communication open are important.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, but I personally, as a committee member, I would like to have this on my phone.
I agree.
Thank you. Mr. Wiggins.
First, thank you very much, Mr. Giacomo, for everything you do for our district. This is an incredible program. I've just one question. I'm just curious if we have numbers of how many teachers and staff have this app on their phone. Like, is there like a percentage, or did he already say it?
So,
did I miss it?
So the goal is to get everybody to put the app on their phone.
Yep.
And if they choose not to, working for the district, name, telephone number is all stuff that we need to make sure that you're going to get that notification. So when we did that test run, 1,581 faculty and staff in the district, they all received a text message. Maybe not a push notification if they chose not to have the app, but they're still going to receive a text message and a Gmail, an email as well. Yes, the text is nice, but I would love everybody to have the app and get the push notification. The app just offers so much more. You get those resources in front of you if, God forbid, you should need them. You get location of the emergency more finite with overhead maps if, God forbid, there were an incident. So the goal is to get everybody to have the app. It would be difficult to give you an exact number on how many faculty members have it, but I can probably research if I needed to.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have to say, I
Ms.
had
Hazelwood.
this on my phone the first time around.
Many did.
Mr. Tester was an advocate for this, and he would say, you need to have this on your phone. So I'm a rule follower, so I went home and, okay, I'm getting this on my
Sure.
phone. And I thought it was a great thing then. Now, with all the information we have, and in the world that we live in that has changed so much,
Yeah.
to me, it's a given that we should all have this on
Yeah,
our
it's
phone.
just that it's that emergency notification that's going to go out fast.
Yes.
And that's what we want. We want that messaging to get out as quickly as possible so that we can react. We can do what we were trained to do inside the schools.
Yeah.
But it's a necessary piece of equipment. Like I said, not to be confused with something that prevents. But what it does is opens up those lines of communication so that we can then react.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you for everything you do for our district.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Do you yield, Miss? You're all set.
I yield.
Thank you. Mr. Testa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Giacomo, thank you very much. Yeah, it was, I think, 8 years ago when we first put this out there. A couple of things. I'm immensely proud of that we have this in our district. I truly am. Because as a parent, and my kids are all adults now, but when they were younger in school, right, all that crazy stuff was going on then. It gives you a sense of security that, you know, my school district, you know, has this. And when we had it, I would sit on the stage and I would ask administration for how many people had it on their phones, and I would break it out by school, because to me, if I don't have it on my phone and something happens, I have to rely on someone else now.
Correct.
Right? And depending on what the nature of the emergency is,
Correct.
that could leave me with a lot of guilt. But, you know, I think it's been much improved, technology, and I agree with you. When we first had it, it was everybody put it on their phone.
Sure.
Right? The conversation was not, you'll get the notification, right? So I just want to thank you for all the work, and I remember the conversation we had a couple of years ago at the Hoxie event, when you mentioned Rave, and I said, it's a no-brainer. We just have to, because I was disappointed that we lost it, but I understood why we didn't have it.
Yeah.
So
we applied for the grant. We found out that we secured the money. We signed a contract in November of '23, and that's what started the rollout. By May of '24, we were fully operational, and we were ready to go. Like I said, it was time to use it, and it was a no-brainer. This was good technology. I have other school districts calling and saying, how do we get that? Does anybody else in the state have this? You know, so there's chatter around in education as well. We need to bring this to our district. So it's made a significant impact.
Well, especially when your building stock is old and it wasn't designed for security.
Yes.
Right? You have new schools, you design it in.
Correct.
As best you can. So I'm just extremely grateful. This is money that will always be well spent. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just echo my colleagues' comments, and you know, certainly in an emergency situation, communication is key. The speed in that communication, the speed of that communication is key. But you also want it to be organized and very consolidated and pointed, so that way it doesn't incite more chaos.
Correct.
So I really like the system. Very happy that our school district has it. Hoping more people download the phone app. And yeah, just great job. And my only question for you would be, you indicated that this is grant funded. Is that an annual grant that we need to apply for, or is that we purchased it and it's a 3-year contract?
Purchased and it's a 3-year contract.
Okay, great. And do you know when it's expiring? We're in year 2.
Year 2.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I got a lot of numbers in my head,
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'm putting you on the spot.
No worries.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, discussion, what's up? Yeah, discussion presentation, draft of the 5-year forecast, Mr. Bowl.
Good evening, school committee. So I've put together a little presentation that focuses on the 5-year plan that we've been discussing with City Council, with the Mayor's Office, with the Auditor General, and just want to summarize some of the highlights for it. I know we talked about it briefly 2 weeks ago at our special school committee meeting, but we can go into a few more of the details here. So just the overall highlights from the plan. Again, this is a high-level overview of it, but An increased allocation from the city in fiscal year 26 would go a long way toward shortening the duration of the deficit and making the out years, fiscal year 27, 28, 29, a lot easier. And so one of the focuses, I think, in our fiscal year 26 budget request from the city will be a higher allocation than we've historically received. It also assumes some savings from headcount reductions in 26 and 27 as well. I think everyone's well aware that one of the biggest issues that we have from a budget perspective is how far over budget we are on salaries and benefits. And so in order to correct for that, there need to be some savings realized from headcount reductions within the district. So part of the fiscal year 26 budget is putting together a staffing plan by position, by salary, to make sure that we have better control over positions within the district. I've cited it before, but fiscal year 21 was the last time we used position control in the accounting system to budget. The accounting system itself, obviously, we're replacing, and the knowledge of how to use that process has been lost. Every year since fiscal year 21, we've been increasingly more over budget on salaries. So making sure that we have a solid plan and we understand exactly what the cost of headcount is crucial. Also, just taking into account that we need better control over non-staffing expenditures. The administration has done an excellent job, I think, of meeting more regularly in order to evaluate expenditures in the district. A team made up of myself, the superintendent, assistant superintendent, and executive director of accountability has been meeting weekly in order to review all purchases that are taking place in the district. This has slowed the pace of spending, which is important, and has also helped us sort of prioritize what expenditures need to be made during the year. And the last piece just being adjustments as time progresses. So nothing is set in stone. There's a lot of unknowns that are going to occur over the next 5 years. And so when there are years where we have better outcomes, maybe the allocation that's requested from the city is less, and things like that. So just being flexible and making sure that we adjust this 5-year plan as results are realized. And the last bullet point I would add is just any sort of contractual negotiations that occur after the current contracts are expired. We need to take into account the fiscal health of the district at that point when making those decisions. So this is the plan that we've discussed with City Council on a number of different occasions. You'll see at the very bottom, the rolling surplus / deficit is going to be what our fund balance is. One important thing to notice right now, fiscal year 25, we're showing a fund balance. That is assuming that the pension cut that's being proposed tonight before school committee is approved. Right now, for fiscal year 24, our draft financials show $1.3 million operating deficit. If school committee were to approve a $1.4 million cut to the pension in fiscal year 24, we would actually potentially run a small surplus, and the fund balance that was previously being used to offset the deficit in fiscal year 24 would carry forward to fiscal year 25. You can see again at the bottom on that line, fiscal year 26 shows what our fund balance would be after taking into account that fund balance plus that current year's deficit. Again, I'm assuming a deficit in fiscal year 26. We should recognize significant savings from headcount reductions, and we do have a $2.5 million increase in state aid, which will be very helpful. And then hopefully in fiscal year 27 going forward, we can start running operating surpluses in order to repay the city for the deficits realized in the prior years. Again, this is showing that by year 5, fiscal year 29, we would be running a small fund balance, which is where we want to get back to. That's the goal. And at the top, you'll see the allocations or the increases to the allocations we would be requesting from the city. Right now, we're showing 3% in 26, 3% in 27, and then 2.5% in 28, 29. Again, I would reiterate that as financial results are realized and our audits are completed, if we do have results that show that we either ran a surplus earlier or we ran less of a deficit in 26 or 25, we can adjust our request from the city at that point. We may not need 3%, maybe we only need 2.5. Sorry. So the other thing to note, a prior version of this that I shared 2 weeks ago, I was showing state aid being flat after fiscal year 26. On this version of it, I did include a 2% increase per year for state aid, which is about $1 million more per year. I think that that's probably a little more fair. Showing flat state aid from 27 to 29 was probably being a little bit overly conservative. The salaries and other pays are going to be the contractual salaries in the district plus step increases plus the contractual raises that we're estimating for the next few years. Benefits, we're assuming a 2% increase per year. Historically, the increase has been, over the past 5 years, has been about 1.6%. Assuming a 2% increase per year in benefits in order to be conservative, and I don't even know how conservative that is at this point with the increases that we're seeing in healthcare expense for the district. The non-staffing expenditures line, again, I think one thing that's important here is that in the past, we have surplus funds on the non-staffing lines, which has helped alleviate some of the pressure from being over budget in salaries and benefits. Again, we need to correct salaries and benefits, and we should be budgeting for exactly what we're going to be spending and not hoping that we end up surplusing funds and non-staffing in order to compensate for under budgeting. So it's crucial over the next 5 years that when we budget $41 million for non-staffing expenditures, we don't spend $42 million. Because that just exacerbates the problem over time. The next slide, and again, as questions come up, feel free to ask, or we can go ahead.
So, both questions and statements.
Yep.
I appreciate what you've put together here thus far. I still think we have a little bit to do here. I think the city allocations, I understand you're essentially being subjective here on this. You have to kind of pick and choose what you think. I think 11% over the next 4 fiscal years towards our maintenance of effort at the same exact time of the bond payments is going to be very difficult to achieve. And so I'd almost rather us strip those numbers down just to plan for worst possible case scenario. And if we're fortunate enough to achieve that 3%, great. Otherwise, what I would hate to do is we plan to 3%, we don't achieve 3%, and then we're sitting here, or the Budget Commission is sitting here come June and having to make amendments that are going to be just drastic. So that would be my comment on the city allocation. The other thing that I'm looking at here is cuts to staffing. You're showing $5 to $6 million over the next 2 fiscal years. Is that solely headcount reduction, or is that headcount reduction and other?
Yeah, so we have discussed potential incentives in order to incentivize retirees, which could result in savings for the district. The one thing I would just add to that is if there were significant savings to be had from retirement incentives, every district in the state would have a robust retirement incentive.
Yeah.
The reality is, if you can incentivize, just for an example, say a step 10 teacher to retire, you're not filling that position with a step one teacher anymore. And so where you may have realized significant savings in the past, there's just not a supply of brand new teachers in order to replace those top step teachers. So the savings from retirement incentives, while I think it's a very good idea to explore and to potentially implement, we're not talking about like 6 or 7 figures a year that we'd realize from those options. But to your point, yes, this isn't just strictly headcount reductions. It is also potential alterations to benefit plans and things like that. Obviously, our benefit plans for the unions are contractual, but there are other options we can explore.
Okay. My other question on more so in FY26, I believe the position control is necessary, and obviously you guys are going through the budget development process now. I just want to be open and honest. I know we have to close a deficit here, but I don't want to make frivolous cuts to personnel only to bring them back, kind of like what we did here in FY25. So I would really like if that position control, as part of this 5-year forecast, can kind of get done. I know it's a big undertaking, and you guys are working on a lot right now while also developing the FY26 budget. But I feel like that's an essential component if we're going to support $3 million in cuts to staffing and not have the same issue occur that we just saw here with 25. So that's more of a general comment. At the bottom there of FY25, you're showing a $6.4 million deficit at this moment. Is that before or after we possibly take action on the 2.6 tonight?
So it's after. Again, I would say the nature of projections is that the earliest versions of them are going to be the most conservative. So when we said $9 million in November, we're positioning a worst case scenario. This is if we do absolutely nothing, we don't slow spending, there's no cuts to pensions, there's no cuts to headcount, there's no change. So we just spend according to the budget we've put forward, and we have these other issues creeping through on the personnel side. I think that the 2.526 million of savings achieved through cuts management that's on this file right now, we can feel confident in. That would be the 1.526 million of pension contributions in fiscal year 25, plus $1 million of proposed cuts from budget managers. Those are much more under our control. Some of the other savings that we've listed in prior meetings are a little more difficult to control, I would say. Like, there's a difference between cutting a budget line and actually not spending dollars. So if we say, I'll just use the fuel oil cut that we made a couple weeks ago as an example. We had $400,000 budgeted. We approved $100,000 of cuts, so now the budget's $300,000. So we're saying we're going to save $100,000. But if we end up spending $350,000, we didn't save $100,000. We only saved $50,000. And so right now, the focus of my office is in putting together a clearer picture of what actual spend is for fiscal year 25. Far less focused on what the budget looks at this point. We know we're over budget. We know we're significantly over budget on personnel. What we're trying to figure out now is exactly what we're going to spend on non-staffing expenditures through the rest of the fiscal year. And it goes along with what I said 2 weeks ago in terms of putting together a more robust projection in March when we have a clearer picture of what the spend is for the rest of the year.
Okay. Benefits line item, I apologize if I missed you saying this. I was trying to keep up and take notes here on your presentation. The benefits line item, does that include the pension contributions back in?
Does it include the pension contributions back in?
So tonight we're deferring a pension contribution possibly.
Yep.
And you have those scenarios which would be tied in with your forecast here.
Yep.
Based on which one you select. Obviously, then it would have minor adjustments throughout the fiscal years in front of us.
Yep.
So where on this would be the pension contributions? Would it be the benefits?
Yep. So they'd be included in that 46.5. Any additional contributions that would be made in fiscal year 26 are going to be included in that 46.5 million.
Okay, I have no other questions. Anyone have questions at this time on this? Mr. Test.
I do. Thank you. Thank you. So, Mr. Bull, just on that one last question, in FY26, the 46,550.
Yep.
Is that, so that would include the proposed 3.5 million wise pension contribution that would happen if tonight's thing was approved?
It would have to, yeah. So that line item is going to have to be budgeted for. Again, what ultimately is approved is the contribution for fiscal year 26 is going to be part of the fiscal year 26 budgeting process. We're not deciding, that's not being decided on tonight. But that number will have to fit into that line of 46.5 million. The one thing I would just add is that for fiscal year 26, where it says cuts to staffing, $3 million, that's not strictly salary. There's going to be benefits associated with any sort of salary that's cut. And so there will be reduction to benefits included in that $3 million. We just need to realize $3 million of savings in salary and benefits in 26.
Right, and I think to the chair's early question about headcount can be retirements.
Yep.
It's just a reduction of headcount, however it is,
Yep.
however it's comprised, right?
Yep.
Because you get the salary and then the benefit, the concurrent benefit that goes with it.
Agreed.
Right? So, yeah, and I think, and to your point, we can, the fuel oil example is a good one because you can, we can cut 100,000 of fuel oil and I'll just change your scenario a little bit and we spend 300. But on another line item, we spend 45,000 more, right? So your net reduction is not that $100,000. And it reminded me of a quote. It's a Donald Rumsfeld quote. He said that we have the known knowns, the known unknowns, and the unknown unknowns. And that is what we're trying to do, is encompass all those three.
Yep.
So we could come up, whatever number we come up with tonight, we have to just be a little cautious in how hard we hold on to that number because there are so many things that are going to change, right? You get end of the year expenditures, you get transportation costs, you get
Yep.
whether it's Medicare reimbursements or whatever it is, right? So, but I think you also showed in your presentation, to the chair's point, with the city allocation at 3, 3, 2.5, 2.5. Your next
Yeah.
page is 2s across the board, right? You have another scenario where the allocation is only 2%, right?
Yeah.
Is that what
Here
I'm
we go.
saying?
So just for example's sake, this is the scenario that Mr. Testa is referring to. And this is just to show all things constant. So state aid, city, I shouldn't say city allocation. So state aid, the cuts to headcount, the steady funding of non-staffing expenditures, given everything in a steady state, if we're only receiving 2% increases to the allocation from the city, you can actually see that our problem increases. So we start fiscal year 25 with that same deficit. We reduce it by the $873,000 fund balance, but then we run deficits in 26, 27, 28, 29, and our fund balance becomes more negative over time. Again, I think the important thing to focus on is fiscal year 26, achieving significant savings through cuts and getting as large as possible of an allocation from the city to try to alleviate this budget stress in the near term. The sooner you can achieve those cuts and get increased funding from the city, the sooner this is over. And again, as we achieve hopefully more favorable results than a pretty conservative projection, then we can adjust the request from the city going forward.
Anyone else?
You have more to go, right?
I just didn't know if anyone had
okay.
anything
Yeah.
on this. Yep. Anyone else on these? Nope.
Keep going.
Yep.
So I just wanted to provide a little bit more information on the decision around the pensions as well. Just to address a couple of the questions that came up during public comment, I absolutely agree that the actuary's recommended contribution is what should be budgeted and contributed going forward. Again, last year, or fiscal year 23, I should say, the budgeted amount was $1 million. We had a more positive fiscal situation at that point, and so the decision was made to actually overfund and contribute $1.8 million. We're in sort of uncharted territories right now in terms of Warwick Public Schools' budget situation, and so I think that we have to propose a number of different things as an option. None of them are favorable, none of them are good, but going forward, we need to get back to contributing the actuary's recommended contribution. The goal of every pension plan should be to be 100% funded, which this plan not long ago was. And I would just add again, every pension plan that's 50% funded was 80% funded at some point. And so making continuous cuts to a pension system is how you get to that point of being underfunded. These are the two components of the actuary's recommended contribution. So there's the present value of current benefits, so that's basically what we need to pay out on an annual basis. So right now that's about $1 million to $1.5 million. The current unfunded liability as part of the actuary's recommended contribution is $970,000. That number grows every time we underfund the pension. And so $970,000 a year is the component made up of past years where we underfunded it. So for an example's sake, again, any sort of shortfall in funding, there's a 2-year grace period, and then 20 years after that payment gets spread over. So if say just for simplicity, the actuary's recommended contribution's $1 million, and we decide to fund 0, there's a grace period of 2 years, and then starting in year 3, $1 million divided by 20, so $50,000 a year, gets added to the unfunded liability. And so when you have successive years of underfunding, your liability grows more. And you could get to a point similar to what we're seeing in fiscal year 26, where we're saying we may need to contribute $3.5 to $4 million to the plan, where your pension contributions are starting to really squeeze out expenses of the district. So in lieu of programs or hiring additional personnel that are needed in the district, you're now funding a really large pension liability. And so the goal should be to fund the actuary's recommended contribution, because that keeps us on pace to increase the funded percentage and make sure that we're always in a position of being at a healthy funded status. These are simply scenarios. We're not voting on what the contribution in fiscal year 26 is going to be. That's going to be part of the budget process for fiscal year 26. But one of the comments or questions that came up was, where did these numbers come from? And again, we posed a bunch of different scenarios to our actuaries saying, all right, well, if we contribute this in year 1, this in year 2, this in year 3, what % funded is the pension after year 3? Right now, the pension is about 83% funded, and so one of the goals in this exercise, I think, is to make sure that after the contribution for fiscal year 26 is made, we're at least at 83% funded again. So we went through a number of different scenarios. You can see the % funded on the bottom section. Like scenario 3 there, you see that we're 84% funded. Scenario 4, we're 83.4% funded. Next slide, again, 81%, 82.2%, 82.8%. The reason for less smooth contributions, again, I don't disagree that some of these scenarios, like scenario 4, show us funding things over a period of time, and smoother contributions, I think, are better. But one of the things that I think has to be taken into account is the city's credit rating. The city's credit rating will partially be based on audited financial statements and audited fiscal results. And so if we run a deficit in 24, we run a deficit in 25, we run a deficit in 26, the bond issuers or the bond credit rating agencies are going to start to evaluate what interest rate or what our credit rating is, and that's going to affect the interest rate that we borrow at. Right now, I think we're...
Mr. Bolton, 1 second.
Yep.
To that point, the prior slides, the draft 5-year plan had multiple years of a deficit.
Sure. In fiscal year 24, it would not be.
Correct, but you've got 25, 26. So you've got 25 with 6.4,
Yep.
26, 1.3. So you've got 2 back-to-back years there, and that's with a pretty big assumption there in 26.
Yeah, and I would just add to that the potential cut to fiscal year 24 would again right now draft financials, we're running a $1.3 million operating deficit. We're talking about writing off an expense of $1.4 million from those financials. So fiscal year 24 goes from being a $1.3 million deficit to potentially a small surplus. Fiscal year 25, unavoidable. At this point, we know we're going to run a deficit, probably to the tune of a couple $1 million. That $6.4 million number I'm showing here, again, is a projection. It's conservative, but I'm not going to put a super aggressive number up there without more confidence behind the numbers. That's what I'm saying. Over the next month, when we put a projection together for March, it will be more refined. But for the sake of being conservative, showing a $6.4 million deficit. And in fiscal year 26, again, there are some relatively conservative assumptions built into this model, and we're showing a $1.3 million deficit as of right now. We don't know if we're going to get 3% from the city. So if we only get 2% from the city, that $1.3 million number could actually grow, or if we're able to achieve more savings and we do get 3%, maybe that number is smaller. Again, these are just projections. But again, the city's credit rating is going to be based on audited results. And right now, we do have some level of control over that. Fiscal year 24, you can vote tonight on cutting those pension contributions, and it would reduce the deficit number by $1.4 million. You're writing off $1.4 million of expense.
But for FY24, we had a surplus that we dropped us into this, $680,000 range.
Yep. So there right now there's $700,000 of fund balance, and because we're running a deficit in fiscal year 24 of 1.3 million, that $700,000 will be used to offset that to be 600,000.
Yep.
However, if you make the decision to cut the pension contribution in fiscal year 24, you're now in a small surplus position. That fund balance carries forward to fiscal year 25. So you can actually use the $700,000 of fund balance plus any small surplus that we end up running in 24 to offset your deficit situation in fiscal year 25.
Yep.
So it can be used to reduce fiscal stress in 25. I think the goal is really to get fiscal year 25's number as low as possible.
Okay.
We've done everything we can. I think everyone agrees we've cut everything from the budget that we possibly can. This is sort of the last thing. Again, I'm just gonna.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. When you were saying 1.3 million for FY24, I was lost because I believed we had already thrown a surplus at that to get it down to 680 or whatever the number was.
Yeah, so that's the operating deficit, but we have fund balance to offset a portion of that.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Just echoing sort of what I've said previously, I think if this decision is made to cut these contributions, it's done with the interest of the new high school construction in mind. The difference, it might not sound like a big difference, but if our credit rating were to change, and our borrowing rate goes up 0.5%, 1%, 1.25%, you're talking about millions of dollars in interest expense that gets added to the city. And interest expense is just the cost of borrowing. So there's no benefit to anyone. It's really just things get more expensive. So if there is anything we can do to alleviate that short-term fiscal stress in order to preserve the city's credit rating and lower the cost of borrowing, I think that those alternatives have to be considered. At the same time, I think that it needs to be recognized that we have not done a good job of funding this pension over the past 5 to 6 years. And so in order to make up for that in fiscal year 26, you need to make a larger contribution than what would be recommended by the actuaries in order to make up for the funding shortfalls in fiscal year 24 and 25 and years prior to fiscal year 23. The last slide I have is just the general law. So this is actually governed by Rhode Island general law as well. So in any year that there is a shortfall in the actuary's recommended contribution, we actually need to put a corrective action plan before the Auditor General to show that we are moving toward contributing the actuary's recommended contribution again, which is, again, part of the plan. Fiscal year 26, make an outsized contribution, and then years going forward, we absolutely have to get back on track with contributing the actuary's recommended contribution.
Mr. Testa.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. So, this is what's the healthiest horse in the glue factory. That's what this is, right? So if you never heard that one? The healthiest horse in the glue factory? No one's ever heard that expression? Am I that? No one's ever heard that, huh? Good Lord. Okay. So I think in a nutshell, though, Mr. Bowl, if we decide to not make those pension contributions, we are married to the $3.5 million for FY26. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. We are married to that 3.5. Right?
Or higher.
Or higher, right. So, we don't have a commitment from the city yet, and it's too early to get a commitment from them. But I think in the effort of, I guess, transparency and maybe collegiality, if we're upfront with them to say, look, this is what the intention is, right? And there is, to your point, there is a bit of a larger goal in terms of a credit rating. Some people will say it's a shell game, but I mean, what are you going to do? You can't control what people say. But I'll be honest, this is a struggle for me. I'll speak for myself. But again, if it goes that way, there is no way that 5 people on this stage cannot put in $3.5 million next year. And my concern is, without knowing what the city's going to do, we're married to that. And we can't sit up here and say, well, because of this and that. So we have to make sure that everything else, if we're at a point where we struggle, something else has to give, right? So I think that's essentially what the commitment has to be. And I say that as someone who's guilty of cutting the contributions to the pension, supporting that in the past.
Yep.
I don't say that with an ounce of pride at all. But I think that's the larger budget issue that is reared its head now. So that's why I just think you're just married to that 3.5 for FY26.
Thank you. Any other comments? New analogies? Okay. Are you all set?
Yep.
That concludes your presentation. Thank you very much. We're now on to discussion update, Mentor RI, Mr. Mark Mainville. I apologize to our presenters after that, but it was a necessary conversation we needed to have. So,
good evening, Chairman, School Committee. Thank you so much for having us tonight. I'm Mark Mainville. I'm Chief of Operations at Mentor Rhode Island. For those of you, most of you know us, but for those of you that don't, we are sort of the premier youth mentoring organization in the state. We have sort of a two-pronged approach. We serve as a training and technical assistance agency for places that want to start or improve the mentoring aspects of their youth serving program. And we also operate direct service mentoring programs in a few places, including the Warwick School District's mentoring program. That is actually how we started. We started as the Warwick Mentoring Program and grown into this statewide agency, but the Warwick program is still at the heart of all of what we do, and we have a lot of heart for that program. So we wanted to give you an update tonight on how it's going this year. We're in our 35th year of running the Warwick Mentoring Program, and we're so happy that we've had that partnership with the schools over that time. I think it's been beneficial for everybody. I will be brief for everybody tonight, and I will turn it over to Sandy Letourneau. She is the director of the Warwick Mentoring Program. Many of the principals and administrators and staff know her very well at know her very well at this point, and she can kind of give you an update on how things are going this year. So, Sandy, if you will.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm Sandy Letourneau. As Mark said, I'm the director of the Warwick Mentor Program. I just wanted to give you an update of how things are going so far this year. Very pleased to say that we have 130 students matched across 16 of the Warwick Public Schools with a mentor. And we are looking into the beginning planning stages of our third year of our peer mentor program, which happens on the Windman Tollgate campus between Windman 8th graders who are identified by guidance and social workers as students who may have a difficult time with the transition up to high school. We match them with 11th graders at Tollgate in meaningful sessions where they get to ask a lot of questions and really share their thoughts and concerns, and then know that they have a peer advocate for them up at the high school once they get there. I take pride in the fact that I match very intentionally the mentors and the mentees in this program. I really try to fill those relationship gaps that the students are experiencing. The schools have been wonderful at recognizing those students that really could benefit from a mentor relationship, and they're starting to identify them at a much earlier age even. We're getting a lot of kindergartners and first graders where social workers and school secretaries and principals and teachers are saying, this student really could benefit from a mentor, and we're seeing positive results of that. So just to highlight a few examples for you, just recently, I've been able to match a 5th grade student at Scott who recently lost his father to cancer with a Brown student who also, as a young teen, lost his father to a medical condition. And to say that the match is working and that the student is benefiting would be an understatement. The teacher is very pleased, the social worker is thrilled, mom is very grateful. I myself am a mentor here at VETS. I will be here at 7:30 tomorrow morning. And I have just myself with my mentee, my 8th grade mentee who likes to frequent ISS. We've been setting a lot of goals. So we're working intentionally on her feeling a little bit accountable to me, knowing that I'm going to come on Wednesday morning, and will she be in ISS or will she be hanging out with me? And she has been meeting that goal, and I've been extremely proud. We have a student here from Afghanistan who we were able to miraculously match with a newly onboarded mentor who is also from a Mideastern country, both trying to acclimate and learn the language and feeling very sheltered and not knowing a lot of folks here. And again, that match, I can't tell you what these matches do to my heart every day. It's just amazing to see. And we have matches that last years and years and years. So we have a student at Pilgrim who's a senior, and her mentor has been with her for 7 years. And she's now trying to advocate for this student to figure out her future. Home life is tough, and the mentor has stepped up to help her apply for college and to figure out how to fill out the FAFSA and things along that nature. So our mentors are going above and beyond, and it's really such an amazing program that these students get to be a part of. So I am grateful to do this work every day, and I thank you for having us as a partner in the Warwick Schools. Happy if you have any questions.
I just want to say thank you for everything that you guys do. You're a great community partner, and we really appreciate it. So that's all I have. Anyone have any questions, comments? Nope. Yes, Ms. Cousineau.
So again, just a huge shout out to Sandy and Mark over at Mentor RI. I'm going to give them a little bit plug. The Dancing with the Stars is their biggest fundraiser. We actually have an elementary principal who will be one of the dancers. I'm going to leave the rest up to your imagination. Tickets are on sale through Mentor RI, I think. And we would love to get a couple of tables together to support them. Part of it is a fundraising event, so there'll be silent auction and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I know I'll be there with a whole bunch of my peeps, so we would love to see some of you there as well.
We are particularly excited that there is a principal dancing this year. So
Was Mr. Testa unavailable for that competition?
He said next year.
He was with the horses in the barn.
Next year,
Yeah.
yes.
And they will add it to the school events calendar. It is Friday, April 11th, and my calendar says 4 to 9, but I don't know if I'm supposed to be there all that time. But
5 to 9.
there you go,
Yes.
5 to 9 on April 11th.
Yes. Thank
Great.
you so much.
Thank you. Congratulations on your new location, by the way.
Thank you.
No problem.
Mr. Chair, it's the glue factory.
It's the glue factory.
Gotta get it right. It's the glue factory.
Next item, discussion update, Warwick Special Education Advisory Committee, WESAC update by Ms. Cardillo.
Good evening. So, Jennifer Cardillo. I am the parent of a senior at Tollgate High School, and I'm also the chair of the Warwick Special Education Advisory Committee, also known as SEAC. During our meeting on January 29th, we had a quite detailed discussion related to the transition program, and also had the opportunity to introduce Sean Wiggins to the SEAC community. With the discussion on the transition program, that was actually a follow-up not only to the school committee meeting from last month, but also to discussions that took place with parents a week prior to that meeting, which the superintendent attended, along with the assistant superintendent, Mr. McCaffrey, and also Assistant Director of Special Services, Steve Carter. So, and Jen Barber also attended too on the phone. So, during that discussion, there was an overview of the mission, the vision, and the culture of the transition program, the current facilities, which were discussed during the school committee meeting, were of concern, as well as opportunities for students for jobs or other type of career experiences. The SEAC recognizes that all of the problems that were raised regarding the transition program are not going to be solved overnight. And that's something that I wanted to share as part of this discussion here. The administration, with support from Assistant Director Steve Carter, is going to be leading the charge to work with parents and the faculty of that program to implement changes that make sense for that student population. This is something that is going to take I would expect not just a month of discussion, but months of discussion to make sure that the parents and the students that are being served end up in a place that makes sense for the community and everyone involved. The other piece that I would mention here as part of discussions is that when you have a program such as a transition program, it's not just the students benefiting, it's also the community. So I'm hopeful that there will be opportunities that will be raised through this process for the community to be enlightened about where they can help out and further the employment opportunities for these students. As part of the discussion also at that SEAC meeting, which was quite well attended, when you have a nice, well-attended meeting, you also have the opportunity for a lot of faculty and staff recognition, teachers, students, administrators. We have a nice list tonight of people that we were going to be recognizing. There are 9 in total, and I'm going to read those off. First one is Sammy Davey, who's a TA in the Room from Transition program, was recognized for helping students learn how to shop. One in particular, apparently one of the daughters really loves her shopping experiences. I have to admit, I'm right with her on that one. So, Angela Egan from Hoxie, who is a TA for grade K through 2 at her son's school. She's just an amazing, powerful person, is amazing, attentive, and patient. She puts students at ease and, makes sure that everyone knows that they care. Kylie Cooper at Hoxie was recognized as being an incredible teacher for a third grader who was struggling and managed to get their testing scores back up. That same parent also recognized Heather Nolan at Lippet for very, very similar approaches with that particular student, whose grades ended up going 120% higher in math and 78% higher in reading. So we weren't just held on to Hoxie and some of the other schools. We move over to Tollgate now. Jacob Medor was recognized. He supports every event. He goes to every game. It doesn't matter what it is. He will be there 3 or 4 times, even if it's in a day, and is amazingly awesome. And he's a social studies specialist and is wonderful. And he's also here tonight. So you can raise your hand. Jennifer Randall, in Technology Integration Specialist at Pilgrim High School, and Julie Mixner from the Department Head of Mathematics at Pilgrim were both recognized as amazing resources for getting students access to technology like Khan Academy, or for working through resources available through the Warwick Public Library and access to students for math. Mrs. Tammy Scott, a special educator at Tollgate High School, was also recognized by students and parents for helping with math and other services. And finally, Tracy Colangelo at Cedar Hill Elementary was recognized for doing a phenomenal job with her students and giving them support and making them smile every time. Having these opportunities at SEAC meetings is really nice. It's so nice to come here even though we have problems and challenges that need to be overcome within the students served by that community, that we also get to recognize teachers and students and staff and the like who are doing an amazing job. So I'm hopeful for the future. I know we have problems to solve, but that's why we have a SEAC. So I don't know if there are any questions at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Cardillo. Anything from members of the committee? Mr. Wiggins.
I just want to say how much of a pleasure it was to be at that meeting. It was very well attended. There were a lot of spirited discussions, but I really think there was I think Ms. Barr was shaking her head. We got a lot answered, and I think, to your point, I think there's a lot to do, but I think there's the right people doing it.
Agreed.
Great. Anyone have anything else? No. Thank you guys, as always, for everything that you do. Really appreciate WESAC. And yes, Jacob was present with us also last night for the marathon meeting. Certainly he is at everything, and we do appreciate having him a part of the school district. So, again, thank you very much. And your next meeting is coming up on February 26, 2025 at 6 p.m. Location?
I believe it will be over at the library, and we will also have a call-in, and thanks for the reminder.
Fantastic.
I'm having trouble remembering things right now.
No problem. Thank
you so much.
Have a good evening. Thank you very much.
You too.
Next item on the agenda, discussion update, capital and construction project status update. Mr. Gothberg.
Good evening, everyone. I'll make this quick. Over at Oakland Beach, all the windows are now installed. Trim pieces and caulking are being completed over the next 2 weeks. Ceilings that were held back from being installed against the window walls will be completed during February vacation, and the remaining book shelving will be installed during that same time period. Issues with the temp control and heating alarms seem to have been resolved at this point in time, but we are watching them carefully every night and during the day to make sure there are no other problems and react to any issues that come up. Warwick Neck, the elevator punch list is complete. A couple minor heating controls to be installed over February vacation. Some exterior touch-up work and grass seeding to be completed when the weather breaks in the spring. The Green Building, we got painting of the exterior handrails to be completed when temperatures are warmer in the spring, and that'll wrap that project up. Over at Holloman, the big project going on, windows are 75% complete. Main electrical switchgear has arrived, and we are waiting on Rhode Island Energy for confirmation of the transformer delivery. Now, all trades are well ahead of schedule. HVAC equipment startup is scheduled for March, and the interior HVAC equipment April, if the transformer arrives in time. Excuse me. Over at Greenwood, final punch list items are to be completed over February vacation, and the new PA system was installed. We have a couple issues there, and we'll be going over on Thursday, I believe, to troubleshoot that. Over at Scott, the septic issue, I'm putting the bid docs together this week. The submission to RIDE is an emergency submission is under discussion on how we're going to proceed with that, because that's a little different than a normal submission, and we want to make sure we can get reimbursement on that. Septic tanks are being monitored weekly by the maintenance plumbing staff for pump outs as needed, and at this point there was that one pump out in the beginning when the issue was discovered, and that's the only one that's been done at this point. And summer projects for 2025, final designs are underway, and we'll be submitting them to RIDE for their approval. Happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Gothberg? Mr. Testa.
Thank you, Mr. Gothberg. The septic system at Scott, that's going to be, we're trying to get that to be bond
Right,
funded,
I talked to
not operational.
Right, I talked that to Mr. Trimble on that at RIDE. He said we should be able to do that as move some funds around to do that as an emergency submission.
Good.
So I just want to make sure all our ducks in a row before I do that, so we don't get bound up on it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions from Mr. Gothberg? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Gothberg. Next item on the agenda, high school project update, left field, as presented by Mr. Bates.
Good evening. So 2 weeks ago, on the 28th, we gave the committee an update on the current cost estimates and projected construction mobilization schedule. I can tell you that that information still stands this evening, so I don't have anything new to update on that. I did want to let the committee know about a couple of important pre-construction activities that are taking place now, and I'll start with the Phase 2, the kickoff of the Phase 2 environmental soil site assessment. We will be taking soil and water test samples on both sites next week during the February break. We purposely scheduled that for when the students won't be on site. We don't anticipate finding appreciable soil contamination at either site, just based on the public records research that we've done. But our team does agree that it behooves us to do some pre-characterization of the soil before starting construction. Any export of soil that needs to get done during the construction process will need to be tested. So we'd rather, if needed, get any requisite paperwork for the Department of Environmental Management for exporting soil, we'd like to have that paperwork started now as opposed to mid-construction, because that could potentially cause a slowdown. That's if in the event that something popped a negative result, which again, we don't anticipate, but we're just being cautious here. So again, that's going to happen. You'll see some testing happening on both sites, some drilling and so forth, but everything will be backfilled once they're done. So it'd be as if they were never there. We also had a hazardous material consultant conduct a survey of the Drum Rock building. They also produced a hazmat abatement plan, and that will be used by our construction manager to start soliciting bids for a hazmat abatement contractor. That will sort of kick off the process of the hazmat and abatement and demolition process for that Drum Rock school. That is step one in starting to enable that site for the construction of the new building. The existing Drum Rock currently sits right within the footprint of where the new building is, so that needs to go first before we can start that process. So again, those are both happening now or in the coming week, and that concludes my update.
Are there any questions from members of the committee for Mr. Bates on this item? Nope. All right, seeing none, no objection earlier to bringing up number 16. Great. I'm looking for a motion to move approval, discussion action, contract award, project labor agreement as presented by Left Field and Mr. Bates. Made by Mr. Testa, seconded by Ms. Hazelwood and Mr. Wiggins. Any comments from Mr. Bates? I have just one comment. I've got to give a lot of credit to Mr. Testa, the members of the building committee, Left Field. I'm not going to lie to you, I was nervous about how the project labor agreement would come out, what language would be in there, how the project would be protected, how the district would be protected, or the school district, and just page after page, I just saw that it seemed like everything was pretty neutral and balanced, and that everybody was kind of protected in terms of this project. And I just pulled out two sections that just to kind of show a little bit to the public what I mean. One section later in the document on page 30, the general savings clause talks about how this document will supersede any of the CBAs, if there's a conflict. So I thought that's great, that the document that our people negotiated for us will supersede those CBAs if there is a conflict throughout this project. So I thought that was cool, except not with the stack and chimney workers. Those people, they're not a part of it. And then a few more pages in the document, the excluded work, Appendix B. I like that there are some certain tasks that have been identified or designated positions that have been excluded, so that way they don't have to worry about paying in to any of these union shops. So great job by everybody who put this together. I'm certainly in favor of it, so I'm gonna support this tonight. So, any other comments from members of the committee on the PLA? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Bates.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, item 9, discussion update, superintendent update. Superintendent Danbrook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I have two talking points tonight. One will be about professional development, and the second one is about inclement weather. So professional development is very crucial for us here in Warwick. It ensures that education and educators are well prepared, motivated, and supported. We know education is an ongoing changes are facing them every day. Educators at the education process, what the students need to learn from the changing standards. So we do it on a consistent basis. So some styles that we do, we have curriculum meetings at every school, and they will be working on something that is needed at their school. And how you determine that is to look at your data and you decide what priorities that you want to work on. Also, there are PD days. We just had one last week. We have a whole full day of opportunities. The right to read. A lot of our teachers were trained for right to read during these full PD days. Some teachers got together as departments and they wrote new curriculum, and that's been really helpful. I know Mrs. Schultz appreciates that. But PD days also give you a chance to talk to other educators, collaborate, share ideas. So it's just a wonderful, valuable time, very valuable time. I think also we have some new initiatives going on, as you know, especially with SEL, and professional development with SEL brings those people together, like social workers and guidance counselors, and how are we going to roll out SEL, how are we going to integrate it into our classrooms. So that's been happening during professional development. So, as I said at the beginning, the field of education is constantly evolving with new research, technology, and curriculum updates. PD helps educators stay current with these changes and adopt their approaches accordingly. So we are committed as a district to continue our professional development activities throughout this year and the future. We do value that. The second talking point was inclement weather. So as you know, we've already had a couple. So I want you to be aware that we do share whether it's going to be a delay, a full day closing, is it going to be a snow day closing, or is it going to be a distance learning closing, or is it going to be an early dismissal? So Teresa's a big help with that. So we do watch the weather, and then we assess the storm, and we make the best decision we can. Sometimes the meteorologists aren't always correct. Don't repeat that. But we do our best. And so you can find this information on the news. And as a district, we also send out the information via phone calls and texts. So I just want you to be aware on how to find that information. And we do this because of safety. Safety for staff and students is number one. And we also sometimes need a delay or a snow day because we need to give our maintenance and custodians a chance to really properly clean our school grounds. So I appreciate your patience with that situation. So thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Are there any questions for the Superintendent? Nope. Okay. Seeing none. Item 10, discussion update. FY 2025 monthly financial report and year-end review. Mr. Bowl.
So I've provided everyone with the monthly fiscal update with results through January. One thing I just want to call out that was mentioned in previous meetings as well was after we've adjusted the budget for budget cuts, we only basically have $600,000 of unencumbered funds for the remainder of the year. Obviously, some of our encumbrances will turn out to not be spent, but just wanted to highlight the fact that there's only $600,000 of unencumbered funds.
You're full of great news tonight, Mr. Bowl.
Yes.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Bowl on the discussion update, FY 2025 monthly financial report and year-end review? Okay, seeing none. We're gonna skip number 11 just for a second so we can wait for our colleague to come back so we can have a full vote on that. Looking for, we'll go to number 12. Looking for a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation of termination of a middle manager. Made by Mr. Testa, seconded by Mr. Wiggins. You want me to rephrase it? For item 12, motion to approve as discussed in executive session.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa, seconded by Mr. Wiggins. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Do you agree with that? 5-0, Ms. Tedeschi. That was on item 12. We'll go back now to item 11. Mr. Testa, you have actually motion to move approval, discussion action, proposed additional budget cuts for FY 2025.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. Mr. Testa, do you have any questions on the cuts in particular?
No, I mean, what's before us is obviously what was discussed, the pension, some vacant positions, and an additional $311,242 from budget managers. And Mr. Bull, I thank you. I had the document in the packet, I just wasn't seeing it. So when I looked at it, and this is, I think it's truly turning over the couch cushions. I really do. But I want to thank everybody who stepped up and did what they could to contribute to this. So thank you.
Ms. Kirby Chapman, do you have anything in particular? Okay. And then for the public's knowledge, my two colleagues at the end of the table over there, they have a conflict on the pension, so they're not able to discuss it. But Ms. Hazelwood, do you have anything on the other cuts associated in voting in this as a packet?
No.
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wiggins, do you have anything on the other cuts associated? Okay. Mr. Bull, go ahead.
There we go. So there were two requests from budget managers, one from the administrator at Welk, to reduce the cuts to her budget by $10,000 in order to help fund improvements for the upcoming Bright Stars program, as well as potential signage for the front of the building. And then from the maintenance and facilities budget, there was a request from Director Oliver to not cut the $5,000 that we had included because that is related to certifications necessary for his staff. So
are you saying it's not $311,242 for budget manager cuts?
that's what we've put forward, but those two budget managers have requested that those amounts get added back in.
All right, can you give us, could you please tell us what the updated figure will be right now then?
Yep.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Mr. Testa.
Yeah, I'd like to know, I get the Welk thing in the Bright Stars program, and I think there's a difference between something necessary for the Bright Stars program and signage.
Yep.
So it's probably, my hunch is it's not that much, but if the signage is just to say Welk, we could live without that, I think. So I don't know what the signage is for. You know, how critical is it, I guess is what I'm asking.
They want to replace the main sign at the front of the building.
Want to replace the main sign of the building, I think that can wait, respectfully.
I would just add that if that's the sentiment, we could also just not approve that expense rather than digging through to figure out what the exact cost of that is right now.
Okay, I'm fine with it. I'm fine. I don't see that as an absolute need.
So if you're taking that out, could you, what was the other one? Because what I want to do is I want to vote on our true cuts right now, so when we leave here tonight, I know what we just did.
So if you take the $311,242 that was put before you, and you subtract out $10,000 from Welk's budget and $5,000 from maintenance and facilities, you're left with $296,242.
What were the final three digits?
242.
Okay, and then when this expenditure for the sign comes before us, it doesn't even have to come before us, we just won't spend it, right?
Yep.
So, okay. So I get it. Because that savings would just be to your point, where you don't know what your true budget number is until you're audited, right? That's when you know what your true budget number is.
Your true spend, yeah.
Right. So this would just be no different than a couple of scenarios we discussed before. So, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody have any other comments? So the potential cuts, round 3 for February 11th will amount to $2,600,000 $2,577. Excuse me. 2 late nights in a row here. $2,600,577. That is what we're voting on right now. Item 11. All those in favor?
Oh, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Testa.
Yes, thank you. I just want to reiterate that that we're married to that $3.5 million number. I can't say it any other way. I can't say it any more clearly. Everybody in this room and everybody who might be watching knows we are married to that number if this goes through. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Testa. Any other comments to Mr. Testa's statement? I want to make sure that when we get that draft 5-year plan to final state, that at the same time in parallel, we have identified the option of the contribution back to the pension for school committee approval, those two things. So that way we're out in the public, everybody's aware, and we're confident. So that way if we're committing to that plan, we're essentially going to be preparing ourselves for the upcoming budgets. So everything now from here on out is kind of intertwined. So, okay. Do you have something to say, Ms. Kirby-Chapman? Are you good? Okay. You're good? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next item, discussion action, recommendations for non-renewals of professional staff retirees. Looking for a motion to move approval as discussed in executive session.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa, seconded by Mr. Wiggins. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. If my colleagues aren't opposed, we have 2 items here as presented by Mr. Kane. Item 14, discussion action, contract award, Singer Equipment Co., Inc., number 21338, and discussion action, contract award, Amazon Capital Services, number 21396. Is anyone opposed to taking those as just one vote? Looking for a motion to move approval on agenda items 14 and 15.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Hazelwood and Mr. Wiggins. Do you want to present them, or do you want us to just take the vote? You've sat there all night, so if you want to talk to him. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Kane?
I have one
Mr.
question.
Testa.
I have one question for Mr. Kane. Does the culinary program currently have one of those rationale ovens? Is this just replacing the rationale oven, or is this new to them?
No, they don't have this. They have an outdated version. We actually thought we were going to go with a gas version. It turned out electric was what we needed, and we saved a lot of money that way and got a low bid on it.
I asked because those are phenomenal pieces of equipment. We have one in our own test kitchen, and it's amazing what they do. So, thank you.
And just unrelated with regards to the Welk sign, if they contact us, we've created signs for a lot of the schools, so we could probably assist with that through graphics. I don't want to speak for her, but we've done that in the past.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. Glad you stuck around. Look at that.
Save some money.
Any other comments for Mr. Kane? Look at
Thanks, Mr.
those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries 5-0 on items 14 and 15. Item number 17, discussion action, change order, Holloman renovation, PCO number 11, Allberg Construction, as presented by Mr. Gothberg. Looking for a motion to move approval.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa. I'll second it. Any discussion on this?
Please let Mr. Gothberg explain this one, though.
Yes.
This was items that should have been included in the construction documents. Really heat for a couple of little bathrooms that got missed. We picked it up. We grilled the contractor pretty hard. The numbers look right. It's not something that anybody should be punished for. It was missed, but it should have been included in the documents, and it would have been included if it was in the bid. So I strongly suggest we pay for it.
Who missed it? Was it the contractor or us?
The architect.
The architect?
Yeah, it just didn't get put in the plans. It's one of those things where he's just missed those particular items.
Who was the architect on the project?
This is the engineer, Griffith and Berry.
Who was it?
Griffith and Berry.
They're the ones that missed it?
Yeah. It happens.
And the building committee is sending it to us with favorable approval, 6-3.
6-3.
Just curious.
Since it wasn't unanimous, that's why we bring it to the school committee.
Yep. So I'm just curious, what were the 3 dissenting votes reason?
The superintendent was one, who else was the second?
Mr. McCaffrey. And probably.
Ms. Calori.
Ms. Calori, yeah.
Yeah.
And the issue was, because it got missed.
Right.
And the rationale was, it would have, if it hadn't been missed, we would have paid for it anyway. It would have been included in the bid.
It's not something that, it should have been included in the construction documents. So if we'd gone out to bid, we still have paid the same amount.
Right, so in other words, you went in, when you guys went in to check what they were going to charge us for it,
right,
it was comparable to what it would have been had it been in the original bid.
And since the building committee, I went back and checked again, and everything looked very, very close.
Yeah, because this was, we had other change orders too, but this one was just, some people had a problem on principle, and as did I. But when you reassured us, or me anyway, that if it had been
This
in
is
the
what
bid,
it would have cost if it was in the bid.
The bid would have been $27,000 higher anyway. Right.
It was, if we paid a premium, it's a couple $100 from what I can see.
Yeah, okay.
Do you yield? Who manages in that situation the engineer? That would have.
What's that?
Who manages the engineering firm there? Would that have been Allberg?
No, it would have been, at the speed which these things go through, because of the schedules we're trying to meet, there's some of the checking that would go on a project like we have at the high schools, where we have multiple rounds of looking over the plans. We don't have that opportunity.
No, I'm saying who manages the engineer? Like right now, looks like we're paying Allberg, and just to be honest, we have a lot of change orders that I see to Allberg. So my question is, who would have managed the engineer here? Would it have been Allberg?
No, it would have been, they come under Secocio's contract.
Okay, they would have been under Secocio. Right. Okay, thank you. Any other members of the committee looking to comment? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 4-1. Thank you, Mr. Gottberg. We've also got you here for discussion action contract award Sinet RIAA number 21368. Looking for a motion to move approval?
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa. Seconded by Mr. Wiggins. Any questions or comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next item, number 19, discussion action, contract award, Curriculum Associates, number 21363, as presented by Mr. Heatherton. Looking for a motion to move approval.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa and Ms. Hazelwood, seconded by Mr. Wiggins. Anybody have any questions or comments? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next item, item 20, discussion action, contract award, Dr. Stephen Feldman, number SP 250053, as presented by Ms. Barber. Looking for a motion to move approval. Made by Mr. Testa, seconded by Mr. Wiggins. Any questions for Ms. Barber? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item 21, Discussion action, contract award, Delta Mechanical number 21394, as presented by Mr. Oliver. Looking for a motion to move approval.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa. Seconded by Ms. Hazelwood. Mr. Wiggins. Any questions or comments?
I have one question, Mr. Gothberg. I don't know if you can help with this. This is with respect to vets and Delta. Did we contract with Delta for this system, or are we still using them? Didn't we talk about at one point in a previous meeting maybe going out as a contract with Delta and making them our go-to source? Yeah, there you go.
Shocking. I believe that we are using Delta as the service tech for
Okay,
vets.
I'll follow up with Mr. Oliver just to make sure,
Right.
but I think so too. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 21 passes 5-0. Item 22, discussion action, curriculum approval, health K-5, as presented by Dr. Schultz. Looking for a motion to move approval.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa, seconded by Ms. Hazelwood and Mr. Wiggins. Any questions or comments for Dr. Schultz on the curriculum? Dr. Schultz, any words of wisdom, or you good?
I just want to say thank you to the phys ed and health teachers and Mr. McCombs, who helps to facilitate the meetings. It took 4 years to finalize this. That's why it's so lengthy. For those of you who haven't checked out the document yet, it's about 35 pages long. So if you want to see what our kids are learning about. And next up, we'll be working on the phys ed document, which should take another 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else for members of the committee? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion passes 5-0. And last but not least, item 23, discussion action, approval of 2025-2026 Warwick Public Schools calendar. Looking for a motion to move approval.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Wiggins and Mr. Testa. Looking for a second. Ms. Kirby Chapman, Ms. Hazelwood. Any questions or comments? Nope.
Yes, I have one question. So there are no state scheduled PD days this year?
No, there are not.
Okay, interesting. Okay, thank you.
I also wanted to add that this calendar was built in collaboration with Ms. Netko from the union. It's in our
Yes, we have a policy that says.
Letting the birthday girl get involved. Any other comments?
No.
Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes 5-0. We're now on to the second public comment portion of our meeting. Individual comments will be respectfully limited to 3 minutes per person, with public comment not to exceed 45 minutes. Though the content of comments will not be restricted, it is the hope of this committee that citizens, committee members, and the administration alike will be respectful of each other's right to speak, tolerant of different points of view, and mindful of everyone's time. This public comment period is for general comments or concerns. Speakers are asked to state their name for the record.
Hi, Darlene Netko again. Yes, Ms. Danbrook shared the calendar with me. We do have in the contract that we get to see the calendar, and there's a policy, so we did look it over, and RIDE has not granted us PD days next year because the right to read stuff is supposed to be finished up this year. Couple of comments. If I heard, I hope I didn't hear correctly that Drum Rock is still going out to bid to be demolished, because I was under the impression, people have said that it was going to be demolished in March. And since the beginning of the school year, Tollgate faculty have been banned, faculty and staff, all the adult employees in the building have been banned from parking behind the school. So we've had to park behind the Career Center or other parts. And it's a long and arduous journey, especially now in the snow. And some of us are getting kind of old to walk up all that way. So I think we need to be able to park back there until that building is actually coming down. We approved an AI policy tonight, which is great because, you know, a lot of the kids now, instead of just copying and pasting from something they Googled, are AIing, and it's harder to detect. And to that end, the district pays for a license for Turnitin.com, but the district did not include the AI generation detection. So that needs to be taken care of ASAP. If we're going to have Turnitin, we need to have all of the bells and whistles with it, because even though I've been using free stuff to detect it, because after 37 years, I know what a kid wrote and what a kid didn't write, but I want to be able to prove it. And then finally, would you please properly fund that WISE pension? Over the years, we have heard, you know, that pension is one of the only pensions in the state that had been properly funded. So stop playing games with it and fund it properly. Speaking as someone whose pension was, you know, screwed with.
30 seconds.
It's not good to screw with a pension. So please properly fund that pension.
Thank you.
Hi, Tracy McDermott. Thank you, Darlene, about the pension. For those of you that haven't been around for a long time, this actually wasn't even that long ago, it was only 6 years ago. In 2019, our pension was at a funding level of 93%. The Auditor General of Rhode Island had put together an assessment of private funded pensions across the state. The WISE pension was at number 3. We're in the top 3 in the state 6 years ago. We're looking at this $3.5 million contribution. The second year, 2025, you got us down to 80.7% funded. So if anybody thinks that's a good thing, I get that the WISE union is the only place you can go because there's nothing left anywhere else. But you have taken a well-funded, never overfunded, no matter how much the city council or anyone else wants to call it, it was never overfunded. To be overfunded, we would have been at 100%. It was well-funded. It was properly funded. It was properly managed. The highest contribution we ever had was $1.8 million. We've gone 0, I've said earlier, 500,000, 800,000, we're all over the place. We had a 10-minute long presentation here talking just about the ARC, just about those annual required contributions and how important they are, and then you turn around and you zero us out 2 years in a row. We're going from 93% to 83% in 6 years. So, Mr. Testa, you hit the nail on the head with the healthiest horse in the glue factory, because everybody that knows that quote knows that every horse ends up dead. That's where we're all going to be. So you hit the nail on the head with that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public looking to comment? Any other members of the public looking to comment? Any other members of the public looking to comment? Seeing none, any members of the committee looking to docket anything for the next meeting? Nope. I would just like to add to recognitions for the March meeting, the Tollgate wrestling team. They won the state championship, I believe. Rex, give me just 1 second. Yes, Tollgate High School. Tollgate High School won the D2-3 state championship this past weekend, and then also, if we could have docketed for recognitions, the robotics team from Tollgate. Yep. Tollgate and Pilgrim.
Okay,
Did I read your mind?
No, but
Okay.
that was good.
All right, Ms. Hazelwood, anything you want to docket for the next?
Yes, I wanted to have Holly's Closet. She is doing a great work. Colby Vane's doing a great work at Pilgrim, and also now initiating a
Holly's
closet over at Tollgate, where she brings all kinds of clothing and needs for the community at both schools. So I wanted
Okay.
to give her a shout.
Anything else? Anybody want to docket? Nope, seeing none. Okay, the next meetings. Fiscal Subcommittee meeting we had scheduled for Thursday. I'm trying to concentrate, guys. Thursday, February 13th at 3:30 p.m. We're going to cancel that fiscal subcommittee meeting so that way the finance and business office there can continue to work through the FY25 matter. The next Warwick Special Education Advisory Committee meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, February 26, 2025 at 6 p.m. The next Policy Subcommittee meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, March 4th, 2025 at 4:30 p.m. The next Building Committee meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, March 5th, 2025 at 7:30 a.m. The next monthly School Committee meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, March 11th, 2025 at 7 p.m. And the next Health and Wellness Subcommittee meeting is still TBD at this time. Being that there's no other matters of business before this body, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Made by Mr. Testa.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Wiggins. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.